little past 9 o'clock, time to conduct the business of Wayne County Board of Commissioners. Mr. Mayo, please, with the invocation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Over the last year, 6 months or so, there's been a movement across our country and across the world that there are attacks on people of faith. It's all been in the news. We're all aware of it. And there's been a lot of communications, even in Wayne County, about the separation of church and state. Exactly what is the role of the church and government? I'd like to point out today that maybe our problem is that the church has been separated too far from the state, that we've gone too far. Because good, solid Christian principles and Bible principles are good for everyone. Ronald Reagan said, without God, there is no virtue because there is no prompting of the conscience. Without God, there is a coarsening of the society. Without God, democracy will not and cannot long endure. Ronald Reagan. Let us pray. Father, we're grateful for your love and your mercy upon each of us. Father, whether we proclaim your name or not, we know that you're watching over us, even when we're not aware of it. And Father, we thank you for this time that we can come together as leaders of this county to do the work for this county and do it according to your will. We ask, Father, that the events that have happened in Wayne County and other parts of our nation over the last month or so, the attacks, the shootings, that, Father, that you might continue to heal us close to home here in Wayne County. We know you're a part of our healing. We know, Father, that you are the master healer. All we have to do is ask. Father, we're grateful for our first responders, our police force, our firemen, our emergency services people. They have responded to these situations and have put their life on the line for freedom and for the citizens of our country. And Father, I especially pray today for our military that are scattered throughout this world still. That, Father, even though they're, as we know, are underfunded and have in some cases not enough equipment to do their job, that, Father, we know that you're with them and that you're with them every day. We ask, Father, that you might protect them and just watch over them like you do all of us each and every day. We thank you for this opportunity to live in Wayne County, and these things I ask in your name. Amen.
Amen. Mr. Payton.
Stand and face the flag, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Mayo and Mr. Pate. I failed to mention at the beginning of the meeting, if you have cell phones or pagers, we'd ask if you would please either cut them off or put them on silent mode. Do I have approval of the minutes for the April 21st, 2015, and the Wayne County Board of Equalization and Review on April 7th and April 21st? Have a motion.
I move adoption.
Have a motion on the floor. We'll adopt the minutes of those three meetings. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor show sign of right hand. Motion carries. Mr. Wood, do we have any adjustments to the agenda?
Yes, sir. We have two. Ms. Holt has given you two additional budget amendments, and I would recommend that you put them down as number 8 under new business.
Okay. Any other adjustments to the agenda?
I'm sorry, what is that? Oh, we also want to add an update from Mel Powers on the new radio system. That would be number 1 under new business. And then
Just make it 1A.
all right, 1A.
Is that the only three
Yes.
adjustments?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Mr. Gurley, do you have any
Yes, Mr.
appointments?
Chairman. The appointment committee met this morning, would like to recommend the following appointments. We'd like to recommend Nancy Delisle and Charles T. Gibson for reappointment to the Commissioners' Council for Older Adults. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to put this in form of motion.
Have a motion on the floor. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor of Commissioner Gurley's motion, show sign of right hand. Motion carries.
Next, Mr. Chairman, we'd like to recommend reappointment of Ed Stevens and Johnny Best to the Wayne County Agriculture Advisory Board, and I'd like to put that in form of motion.
Have a motion on the floor. Any discussion? If no discussion, all in favor of Mr. Gurley's motion, show sign of right hand. Motion carries.
And would like to recommend reappointment of Walter Marm, Carl Groover, and Donald Peters to the Wayne County Veteran Service Advisory Committee, and I'll put this in form of motion also.
Have a motion on the floor. Any discussion? If no discussion, all in favor show sign of right hand. Motion carries.
And that concludes.
Thank you, Mr. Gurley, and thank you for your committee and your work on selecting qualified people for these committees. Unfinished business, request from Larry Jorving to rezone lot in Brogdon Township from residential agriculture 20 to village district. I think, Chip, you're going to go over that with us, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Previous meeting, we held a public hearing on this issue. It's, the planning department received a petition from Mr. Jorvig to rezone one lot, approximately 28,928 square feet in the Brogdon Township from residential agricultural 20 to village district. Property is owned by Mr. Jorvig, located on the south side of US 13 between 117 and Sand Hill Drive. The address is 583 US 13 South, Goldsboro. Current use is vacant. It's bordered on the north by houses, on the east by apartments, and the south and west by houses. Property is accessed, is on the east and the south, and is accessed from Sand Hill. Property is 1/2 mile buffer beyond the noise area for Seymour Johnson. Zoning on the north is R15, and the east, west, and south is RA20. His application states he is proposed to construct a building in which to service vehicles, and the current zoning does not allow for it. So, but you did hold a public hearing on it at the last meeting.
Any questions for Chip?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Mayor?
I just wanted to reiterate what the points at their 8 o'clock session is that this property, and correct me if I make a mistake here, Chip, but we discussed at 8 o'clock that this is an existing used car lot, but it wasn't zoned because zoning was not in place when it became a used car lot. Is that correct?
That was correct.
Okay, so the idea that it's been a business there, the question is that if it moves into a garage, which was talked about at 8 o'clock session, that it may be a garage for a forklift repair, which may change the clientele that's going in there, possibly, then I'll make a motion that we accept this rezoning as written.
Mr. Chairman.
No, hold on. Let me take care of the motion first. I have a motion on the floor. Any questions or discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Camardi?
Well, as Mr. Mayo so adequately put it, it sounds like the conditions exactly for why it might be used has changed a little bit since it was discussed previously, because before it certainly sounded like it was an automotive shop, and now it might be a forklift shop. And I think one of the concerns of the people living in the neighborhood, at least he wasn't sure exactly what it might be. So if it's shifted, if the sand is shifting right now, we don't know how the sand may shift later on. I think another question I might have is, did that gentleman own the car lot? Did he run the car lot when it was a car lot?
Yes, sir.
Is that a car lot that was maybe located next to where he lived?
I do not think he lives next door. Let me see.
Oh,
No, he lives in a different location.
oh,
So Larry, Mr. Jorvig you talking about?
right.
Yeah, he did not live there at that location. It was vacant. It was a lot, strictly car sales.
So he never lived there next to it like those other folks? And
He lives
he,
on a
so
different
he
address.
doesn't live there now? So he doesn't live, you know, I don't know why, I sort of had the impression that it might have been somebody who
Lived
was
next
fixing,
door.
you know, it was a house, he lived next to it and he was gonna utilize some lot that was, you know, next to him and, but in other words, he doesn't live in the neighborhood. Oh, and the other folk do, okay.
Any other discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Bell?
Mr. Chairman, you know, I've been thinking about and observing this board. You know, we only pick certain communities where we can go and change the zoning. We don't do it all over the county, and we talk about property owners. Well, everybody that owns property is a property owner, and if we're gonna have a planning department and a planning board, then we need to stick to residential, let that be residential, and let business be business. We shouldn't mix it. And so, for that reason, I'm gonna vote against it.
Chip, what was the recommendation of the planning board?
Planning board recommended to approve. The village district that it speaks about is a kind of a mixed-use district that allows residential and commercial to coexist in a rural setting. It does limit the size of the lot and the size and type of development that would go there, which is a 1 acre maximum for lot size, and he's he's just a little bit over a half acre there with his site.
Any other,
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Pate?
so there are other commercial outlets in that particular district?
We have village districts that have mixed use, yes. And there is actually a mini storage located adjacent to this property as well as an apartment complex.
And they are considered commercial?
They are considered high-density residential.
Okay.
They are, it's mixed use, and I think they had to, I can't remember, but they had to come get a rezoning when they built the mini storage. Or may have had to have a special use permit from the Board of Adjustment, I can't remember.
Let me ask
Mr.
you one.
Kamari?
You said the mini storage
Yes, sir.
next to it, is that located on 13, or is it on the other street?
Access from Sand Hill Drive, mini storage units are here, here.
Sort of back in the field or in the wood area?
Yes.
And so when the arrow goes up there to 13,
Here's his,
right,
car lot was.
but on the left and right side of that, those are houses, those are residences.
House here, apartment complex here, mini storage units here.
Back in the-
and here.
Back in,
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Darden?
I don't want to belabor this, no, we'll go ahead and call the vote, but I do want to make sure that everyone's aware that the property actually had a beauty shop on it at one point,
A long time ago.
then was transferred over to where it was a car lot. So over the period of years, this property has been used for commercial. Then along came zoning, which brought in the property. Prior to that was no zoning, correct?
Correct.
Zoning came in, and as a result of that is why this is before us today. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll call that the question.
Okay. I have a motion on the floor. To pleasure of the board. All in favor, show sign of right hand. All opposed, show sign of right hand. Motion carries 5-2. Thank y'all. Next item.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Mr. Doherty.
inquire, that does not need to come before us again?
No, it was before you last time.
Okay. All right, sir.
This,
Thank you,
done.
Mr. Chairman.
It's done.
Okay.
Item number 2, Mr. Wood.
Item number 2 is a motion to approve a policy on budget amendments. You have a memorandum in your packet on page 47 from Mrs. Holt. She and the county attorney and I met on this. This is the same policy we've had, except under section 4.5. We've changed that paragraph to read, the county manager will decide which budget amendments are to be included in the consent agenda and which will be part of new business. Consent agenda budget amendments do not require individual consideration or discussion. However, any individual board member may request that any budget amendments be removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion and vote. In making his decision, the manager shall consider whether additional county funds are required and the dollar amounts involved. Recurring state and federal grants and funds transferred under section 4.2 above will be handled as consent items. So the idea was y'all wanted to put some of these on consent agenda that are perfunctory type budget amendments, and that's what we're trying to do there. But as a safeguard, if I put one under consent agenda and one of you wants to discuss it, it's just like with any consent agenda item. All you have to do is say, I want to pull that particular budget amendment out for further discussion, and it would be removed from the consent agenda. You don't vote on it. It's just the rule is if one person asks for something to be taken off the consent agenda, it's taken off and open for consideration. And just to reiterate, you'll continue to get the full budget amendment in here, so you'll be able to review all of the information and make a decision for yourself if you want to discuss it further. So with that, we're recommending adoption of this policy, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Doherty.
I move adoption of the amendment to the budget amendment policy.
I have a motion on the floor. Any discussion? If no discussion, all in favor show sign of right hand. Motion carries. Okay. Before we go to the consent agenda, Tommy, you got mail on the way? Yes. Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda. It's a pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Camardi.
I move that we accept the consent agenda as printed.
I have a motion on the floor that we approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? If no discussion, all in favor show sign of right hand. Motion carries. Our next item is new business. We will have Mail here. So he,
I had to pull him out of training, but he's on the way.
okay. You want us to go ahead and take care of another couple of items, Mr. Wood, before we?
Yes, sir. The first one is a presentation of 2014 Community Child Fatality Prevention Team Activities Summary Survey, and we have David Madden from the Health Department here to do that.
Good morning, Mr.
Good
Chairman
morning.
and fellow commissioners. One of the duties of the health director is to serve on a dual department and county agency team called the CCFPT. Okay, so if you haven't heard enough of those abbreviations, but that stands for the Community Child Fatality Protection and Prevention Task Force, or team. I'm going to give you a quick summary of what that is. The CCFPT team is actually designed with multiple agencies, medical professionals, law enforcement, schools, health department, DSS, court systems, public members, etc. And it's a confidential team that looks at all child fatalities that occur for residents of Wayne County. Excuse me. If a child dies outside of the county, even even if it's in another state, if they're a resident of Wayne County, we review the incident. The duty of the team and the responsibility is to examine system issues related to the child death to see if we can make recommendations based on system issues. We don't point fingers at people. We don't try to cast blame on how things happen and speculate on the possibilities of why death occurred, but what we try to look for is trends. We look for issues in the system of how the process was carried, how agencies interacted, communication, and so on, to try to examine if we can make recommendations to the state Child Fatality Prevention Task Force, who in return make recommendations to our legislators. One of the best examples in history for North Carolina is related to the helmet use in ATVs. That was actually a legislative component that came out of the Child Fatality Prevention Task Force. Now, what I'm tasked with is to present a summary of the cases that we reviewed as our activities to the board each year. I apologize, I did not do that last year. I am remiss for that, but what I will do this year is do a combination of this current year's and last year's, and then in return, some of this data you'll hear in the 2016 report because it'll be overlapping as I catch up. Our task force reviewed 24 examined cases of child deaths in Wayne County over that overlapping 2013-2014. We don't review the cases until 1 year after they occur. We're allowed by law to requisition all records related to that child's death. There does not have to be a consent from family, does not have to be a consent from the medical. By law, we are allowed to requisition, and any agency that had any interaction with that child can turn over any records, mental health records, medical records, whatever, to our team to review. We do it all under a confidentiality statement. The only thing that we cannot do is to work directly with the immediate family of the child for obvious reasons. In those 24 cases, what I want to present to you is simply the trend data that we saw and what actions or recommendations we made to the state. Now conclude my presentation and report to the Board of Commissioners. Of those 24 cases, where we specifically saw trends are related to three primary areas. I'm going to go through quickly about some of the causes of death. Of the 24, we saw 16 infant mortality and non-viable conditions after birth. We saw 2 homicides related to child abuse, 3 suicides, and 3 accidental deaths. 1 was drowning, 1 was suffocation, and 1 was a vehicular incident. Of the trend data that the task force determined, we saw 3 components where we saw higher prevalence of death in children for Wayne County. Primarily, we saw it in infant mortality and non-viable conditions after birth. You have to excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. 16 of the deaths, as I said, were related to that, so that's significant. That's over 66% of the deaths related. This is why we work from a systematic change with all these agencies to try to improve prenatal care for mothers, early involvement in prenatal care, while we counsel mothers on drug abuse during pregnancy, smoking during pregnancy, domestic violence during pregnancy. A lot of these things can contribute to infant mortality. Thank you so much. Along with that, some of these are congenital effects that happen during the development of the child, which there is no real definitive cause. And the child after birth is non-viable. Some of these children live 1 day, some of them live 3 months, some of the children live 2 years before they demise. The other area we see is in suicide. When you get into presenting a trend data regarding suicide, one child taking their life, as we know, is simply unacceptable. I mean, one child. So when you say trend, we saw three suicide-related deaths over that time frame of this report. You can't really compare it sometimes from year to year. You can say, well, yes, we had 1 or 0, or we had 3. But the point is, the number's so small, one change in a suicide rate can dramatically increase the percentage. So, but what we look at, though, is any above 0 is an unacceptable situation for child deaths in Wayne County. And lastly, we had child abuse. We had 2 homicide scenarios where child abuse was the factor for child-related deaths. Again, all this is tragic. It's not really interesting in the sense of something that you feel good about talking about, but it's a necessity that I presented as part of my duties as health director so that you are aware of some of the death-related causes for children in Wayne County, as well as what we're doing about it on child fatality and teen. After we review these deaths, what we do is we consult with this panel of experts and in the relevant fields. We examine system issues. Then we consult with each other, decide if there's action that needs to be taken by the team. And we've had basically one specific recommendation that come out of our team after reviewing these cases. Our recommendation from the task force, and this goes again to the State Child Fatality Prevention Task Force, is about accuracy in the death information and evaluation of the medical examiner report. Law enforcement that gets involved with these cases, along with how these cases are reviewed, rely heavily on the accuracy of the medical examiner's report. The medical examiner is the one that ultimately, in most cases, determines the cause of death. The accuracy of those reports are paramount for us to make sure that we do a good job, we do our diligence in reviewing these cases to make the appropriate recommendations. In the past, we have felt like there has been some missing information or possibly some inaccurate information, and we have requested that the state continue to evaluate the medical examiner's office to assure us that these reports are accurate. I know that some of you are probably familiar with recent changes and some proposals coming out of the governor's office in regard to the medical examiner's office. It's been in agreement with what we have made. Overall, we have good attendance to the task force under the unfortunate cases or the unfortunate topic, but this report, it will be presented to the state, and again, I present it to you for your knowledge, and if you have any questions, I'm here to answer those questions.
Mr. Mayor, I may have missed it during your presentation, but is the trend, the numbers increased over the years, looking back in previous years in child fatality?
Overall, no. You know, it's somewhat oscillates, it swings up and down year to year, but as far as trending, a lot of the safety measures have gone in. What we're really seeing is infant mortality has gone down, which is our largest cause of death, has gone down overall across the state, but Wayne County still has our own issues with infant mortality in our county that we work with, and it's across the county.
Devin,
Yes, sir.
let's clarify, when we say child, that's from birth and up to what age?
18.
18, okay. Mr. Kamari.
I may have missed this. The discussion we're having now, is that just for this year, or is this?
This is for overlapping of 2013, 2014 deaths. Like I said, we don't review the cases till it has to be at least 12 months after the date of death for the child before we can review it to get submitted the report. So this is, like, again, for me covering for the 2013, and I'll be making these annual report summaries ongoing.
Mr. Dunn. I thought you wanted to say something. Mr. Mayor.
As a follow-up, do you have any information as to where Wayne County stands in the realm of the 100 counties? Where are we as far as the...
That's a good question, Mr. Mayor. I actually don't have the answer to that. I'd be happy to go back and look at it and get you that information, but I don't have it with me.
Okay.
To how we actually compare in child deaths.
Be interesting to know where we are compared to other counties. Thank you.
One,
Mr. Kamari.
while you're doing, if you look that up and get that information back to us.
I'm sorry, can you say that one more?
If you bring that information back to us or send it back to us, however you might, Ed, I would like to know socioeconomics related to child abuse? I mean, socioeconomics related to the prevalence of child abuse.
Yeah, I could get that information. I would have to partner with DSS because they actually deal with their investigations to alleged child abuse, and they do the confirmation or no findings and related to child abuse cases. But we could get that information to you, no problem. And see, anytime where it goes hand in hand, quality of life, poverty. I mean, it's it's pretty relatable. When you see high incidents of children living in poverty, you will see a higher incident of child abuse and neglect.
That's what triggered that
normally
question.
have.
That's, Mr. Madden, as I listen to you, that's what triggered that question for me, is that relationship, and the public needs to be made more aware of the relationship. A lot of things goes back to socioeconomics, economics.
Absolutely. Quickly then, if you allow me, that's why we work to try to develop these programs that reach out to especially young parents that are in poverty because they're already struggling with a lot of challenges. And we work with multiple programs and grant-funded programs like our Young Families Connect program that tries to work on building resiliency and good parenting skills with parents, and also talk about how to be a parent. A lot of them are still children themselves, and they know how to, when they take a break from a child. I mean, a small child can be frustrating to a new parent, and a lot of times that is the stemming of that. Between that and domestic issues is usually a lot of times what we see as one of the core areas of where child abuse occurs.
Thank you. And
yes, sir.
Come back before it's any time to enlighten us and the public about this very issue, because it is
Mr. Chairman.
yeah.
Mr. Bell.
Yeah, I have one
Yes, sir.
request too, if you could. Could you include availability of medical care to that report also? And how do you think that would tie into?
Accessibility to care, or are you talking about
Yeah,
programs
the
that
whole-
would
the whole
work with?
gamut of
Sure, I can
availability
put
of
something together to kind of help just share some information. Any other questions for me?
Anyone else?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your presentation. Thank you in explaining it to us.
That was your ball game, I thought you were.
Right. Thank you, John.
Mr. Wood, you want to go in item number 2?
Yes, sir. Item number 2 is the Older Americans Month. I'm sorry, the Older Americans Month activity update and motion to approve a proclamation for Older Americans Month in Wayne County. Paula, you want to make that presentation?
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Paula Edwards with Wayne County Services on Aging. As you see, Erin McAuliffe is not here today. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it, but she sends her regrets. And thank you for allowing me to come here today to inform you and the public about Older Americans Month. May is Older Americans Month, and this year's theme, which was set by the National Council on Aging, is Save Today, Healthy Tomorrow. And now, with your permission, I would like to read the proclamation and then ask you to accept it. Wayne County, whereas the older adults in Wayne County are the roots from which our community grows, who bestow gifts of wisdom and insight upon younger generations, and strengthen the bonds between neighbors to create a better place to live. And whereas our society can be enhanced by older adults aging peacefully in their communities. And whereas the older adults in Wayne County should be commended for their role in creating and bolstering the fiber of our community and nation. And whereas our community can provide that recognition and respect by enriching the quality of life for older Americans by increasing their opportunities to remain in their communities as active and engaged citizens, providing services, technologies, and support systems that allow seniors to foster and maintain connections within the community, emphasizing the value of elders by publicly recognizing their contributions to the diversity, strength, and unity of our community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Wayne County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim May 2015 as Older Americans Month in Wayne County, and urges every citizen to take time this month to honor our older adults. Our recognition of older Americans and their involvement in our lives can help us achieve stronger and more meaningful connections to each other and enrich our community's quality of life. Adopted this 5th day of May 2015.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Pleasure to the board.
Motion to approve.
Have a motion on the floor, we approve. Any discussions or questions for Paula?
I would just like to make one comment.
Yes,
Just to say thank you very much for being here to read this and
Thank you.
advocate for this age group. And as it's probably the second oldest member up here, I especially want to thank you for John and me.
You're welcome, absolutely.
Thank you for the compliment, Mr. Commissioner.
And also, I want to thank you for being here today. I know y'all are still in shock, just like we are.
Yes, sir.
And thank you for stepping up, and we know that you'll take care of things until, we can choose someone, but thank you so much for what you do for the seniors of Wayne County.
We are saddened by our loss. Erin's done a wonderful job, but we do want to reassure the seniors of Wayne County that we will continue with great service. She's trained us well, and so hopefully they will not miss a beat as far as that, and we're still there for anything they need. Okay. Do I present this to you or to the chairman? What's this? Okay.
Do you want to invite them to the advocacy luncheon?
Yes, I would like to share with you some extra programs that we're offering in honor of.
Let me get a vote on this
Oh,
motion.
did I
we have
get
on the floor.
too far ahead?
No,
I'm
no,
sorry.
you didn't. Then we'll let you make your comments.
Okay.
I have a motion on the floor. Any other discussion? All in favor, show sign of right hand. Motion carries unanimous. Now go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I do like to share with you some extra programs that we're offering in the month of May. And the first one that we are hosting is the AARP Safe Driver class, which is May the 30th. And that is on a Saturday, and it's from 10 to 2. This program is aimed for drivers that are age 50 years of age or older. Drivers will learn defensive driving techniques, proven safety strategies, and new traffic laws. This is a classroom setting. There is a cost. For AARP members, it's $15, and non-members is $20. We do need individuals to register beforehand. We're offering new to Medicare class, and that's on May the 14th at 4 o'clock. This class is aimed at people who will be enrolling in Medicare soon. They will learn about the enrollment periods and the different types of Medicare. We do ask the public to register since seating is limited, but it is no charge. It's free to the public.
What time was that?
At 4 o'clock.
Since I'm going to be going on that in June, so.
Great. Well, Yvonne McLam will be presenting. She is very informative of that, and so please attend. I think you'll gather a lot of information, very helpful.
Thank you.
And we're also offering reverse mortgages program on May the 13th at 10:30. A representative from the nonprofit Consumer Credit Counseling Agency will be at the center to inform seniors about reverse mortgages. And this program allows seniors to remain in their home while receiving some income from the value of their home. And then we have a fibromyalgia program May the 6th at 10:30, and that's with Carolyn Robertson, an RN, and she will be at the center to teach about fibromyalgia symptoms and treatment. And then we have a special service, which is a special program we're offering. We have a memorial program, and that's on May the 18th at 10 o'clock. And each year, the seniors put on a program at the center to remember those that we have lost over the past year. And it's a very moving, beautiful program filled with music, and poetry, and scripture. It's open to the public, and anybody who attends will have an opportunity to remember their loved one that they've lost during this program. And then last but not least is our advocacy luncheon, and that is on May the 28th at 11:30. And each year we try to give our seniors an opportunity to talk with you all in a relaxed setting, very informal. And we invite commissioners, the RAC members, our senior Tar Heel legislator and alternate, And you will eat a lunch prepared by Wages. And I hope that you can attend. I believe Aaron sent out invitations to you. If you haven't received them yet, you should get them shortly. It is open to the public. We do ask them to register ahead of time since we will be providing the meal to ensure that everyone receives that's able to eat. And so I want to thank you at this time for allowing me to come and present. And if any of the viewing public would like information on any of the programs that I have mentioned, please feel free to call me at 919-705-1928.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Item number 3, Mr. Wood.
Mr. Chairman, we have a motion to approve the Mental Health Month in Wayne County proclamation, and we have Ms. Emily Peacock with the Mental Health Association to present that to you. Well, that's okay. Did you want to say anything? They have it, Ms. Peacock, if you just want to make a few comments.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Whereas mental health is essential to everyone's overall physical health and emotional well-being, and caring for your mind as well as your body is good for your overall health and vital for success in your personal life, at work, and at school. And whereas mental illness will strike nearly 1 in 4 adults and children in a given year, regardless of age, gender, race, ethnicity, religion, or economic status. And whereas mental health problems are treatable as many physical illnesses, and people who have mental illnesses can recover and lead full, productive lives. And whereas, as an estimated 2/3 of adults and young people who have mental health disorders are not receiving the help they need. And whereas the cost of untreated and mistreated mental illnesses and addictive disorders to American businesses, governments, and family has grown to $100 billion annually. And whereas community-based services that respond to individual and family needs are cost-effective and beneficial to consumers and the community. And whereas East Point Human Services and the Mental Health Association in Wayne County are engaged in helping people to achieve healthy minds and healthy lives. Therefore be resolved that the Wayne County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim May 2015 as Mental Health Month in Wayne County, and calls upon the citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, and schools to recognize the importance of mental as well as physical health, and to commit our community to increasing awareness and understanding of mental health and the need for appropriate and accessible services for all people who have mental illness. This is the 5th day of May, 2015.
Pleasure to the board. You've heard the resolution.
Motion to approve.
Have a motion on the floor to approve. Any discussions or any questions or comments? Ms. Peacock.
I have one comment.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I hope this is not inappropriate. Thank you for advocating and for this group. But I would like to thank Ms. Peacock over time for me having known her this long. And she just happened to be on the board that voted to give me a job in this county. Thought I should throw that in.
You're really telling our age now.
Anyone else? If not, I have a motion on the floor. If no other discussion, all in favor show sign of the right hand. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you, Ms. Peacock.
We thank you, gentlemen. The Mental Health Association has been here for about 52 years advocating, and the mental health services have changed drastically through these years. We were the first to advocate for a mental health center and to get it started with the help of the county commissioners. And that all has changed, but our mission has continued to try to help and advocate for those who are mentally ill. So we thank you for your support. And we have with us 2 board members, just to let you know that we are here and we're trying to be viable and address the needs as we can see them. Thank you very much.
And will they introduce themselves?
Yes.
I'm Ralph Smiley, retired military and education system, Williams County.
I'm Bobby Jones, retired Department of Human Services, and if I can just
Come up to the microphone, please, so we can.
I just like to seize this opportunity to invite all of our commissioners as well as all of our citizens across Wayne County to join us in this interdependent partnership to support our citizens that have struggling with mental illness. All we have to do is reach out and have to deal with this stigma that's associated with mental illness. That's one of the tenets of our organization, is to try to deal with the stigma that's associated with mental illness. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank y'all so much for being here.
Thank you.
Number 4, Mr. Wood.
Yes, sir. We have
Thank
a
Thomas.
motion to approve an ordinance on Wayne Executive Jetport Rules and Regulations. This is something Mr. Burns has been working on. At this point, I'm going to call on him.
Okay, I think Mr. Payton.
I was gonna say, since we're so close on the 10 o'clock hour, and I know Ms. Childers is dribbling from you, but can we go ahead and make the motion and get the workforce development
Yeah.
resolution out of the way so she
Sure.
can go back and work?
That'd be number 6.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Do you want to have Ms. Childers come up?
Do you want to come up and say a little bit about it, Ted, if you would? I was gonna let you know, we discussed it in the earlier session, and, we decided we're gonna read it, but if you want to have some words, just to kind of explain what this is all about.
Thank you very
Which I
much.
did, but.
Thank you. The Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act was passed last July and will go in effect July 1 of this year. And it's rescinding the Workforce Investment Act funding that comes into the state of North Carolina that requires from the U.S. Department of Labor, as funds come down, that the elected officials of each county sign ownership of those funds that come into the county. The services are provided through the NC Works Career Center. Wayne County, being a large county, receives approximately about $700,000 each year that goes toward employment and training activities for low-income adults, dislocated workers, and youth. And Wayne County has been recognized as a leader in many aspects of workforce development, and your support is certainly appreciated. The 9 counties are Carteret, Craven, Duplin, Greene, Jones, Lenore, Onslow, Pamlico, and Wayne. Yesterday, 6 of the counties passed the resolution. Today, it's on 2 commissioner agendas, and next Monday, we'll finish the last. Our meeting is this Thursday evening in New Bern, and you all are certainly welcome to attend and participate.
Any questions?
Where in New Bern we be meeting at?
1341 South Glen Burnie at the Eastern Carolina Workforce Development Board offices.
You can ride with me if you want to.
What time?
6 p.m.
Anyone else? If not, what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Payton.
since we talked about this earlier this morning, and council has approved the contract, I make a motion that we approve the resolution.
Have a motion on the floor for Mr. Payton to approve the resolution. Any other discussion? No other discussion. All in favor, show sign of right hand. Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Back to Newbern now.
Let's go back up to item number 1A, mail, we ain't got enough time. No. Can you get the airport done right quick? Go ahead.
That's what I like to hear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Several months back, at one of my first meetings with the advisory commission at the Jetport, they asked us about the status of updating the rules and regulations. And apparently, this has kind of been going back and forth for the last several years. And at that time, we were finishing up the fuel farm project out there. So it was appropriate then to update the rules and regs to reflect the fuel farm operation. In the previous rules and regulations, you were required to have a self-fueling permit if you were dispensing aviation fuel yourself on the premises. That's no longer applicable because the fuel farm is an approved self-fueling operation. And so that was the major change in what you have before you. The other section that was updated was the fire prevention section that requires pilots to be responsible for their proper safety fueling measures when they fuel their aircraft at the self-fuel operation. And the last substantial change we made was in the appeal process. We updated that to reflect the assistant county manager as hearing the appeals, where previously it was the OES director. So those are the 3 changes. The advisory board approved those earlier at their meeting in April, and county attorney has reviewed those and concurred as well, and we're asking for your consideration this morning on those.
Pleasure of the board.
So moved, Mr.
Have a motion on the floor. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Kamari.
Mr. Burns, does this rules, regulations have any relationship to the airport in Mount Olive, and do you share this? And
No, sir. No, sir. They're
do you
governed.
think, go ahead.
No, sir, that's governed by the authority that regulates the Mount Olive Airport, but this is strictly for Wayne Executive. And the other thing I didn't mention is that now we can incorporate this in all the new leases that we got to update as well.
So there's no,
The town council in Mount Olive owns and operates the Mount Olive Airport, so they're responsible for the operation of it, and they would have their own ordinance with their own rules and regulations. Whereas you own and operate this one.
we don't. Do you think it would be advisable to share this, or to inquire as if we're all on the same page?
Well,
We'd be happy to send
A
them.
lot of it doesn't pertain to them, because do they have a self-fueling fuel farm down there?
Yeah, I think they do. I think they have
But
self-service.
it's still, this is,
The,
we don't,
This is a state requirement anyway, so I'm sure they probably have one in place.
That's what I was gonna ask.
Yeah, any airport that receives federal or state funds is required to have rules and regs.
Yeah,
in
they
place.
got their own.
We certainly would make it available to them if they want a copy. That's no problem.
Well, I was just thinking, since it looked like we're either tweaking it, readdressing it, or updating it,
Yeah.
I would not want us not to fail to share that, just in case.
Tweaking and updating, that's
Thank you.
basically what we're doing.
any other discussion? No other discussion, all in favor, show sign of right hand. Motion carries unanimously. It is 10 o'clock. At 10 o'clock, we have a public comment section. Feel free to come forward. You are limited to 4 minutes time. And if anyone has any public comments, please come forward now.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Constance Coram. My number is 919-583-0959. Last session, I came before you requesting that you attend a coal ash meeting. And I thank Commissioner Gurley for being present. It was a well-rounded meeting. There is another meeting upcoming the 19th of May at 6:30 p.m. at Wayne County Library. And we do encourage you and the community to please come out to get more information about coal ash. Because the very next day that I left this podium, there was a front page article asking people not to drink the water because of the problems of the coal ash. I think that the community needs to get out and hear about what's happening. We have a lot of deaths, unexplained deaths, and there is something going on. So I just, again, ask you to please come out and help support that meeting. In addition, there was an article in the paper that insinuated that the county may be decreasing the funds for the watch program. Since we are not allotted the opportunity to have the Affordable Care Act in this state, I would ask, and I think every representative here this morning has been talking about health. And if you all cut the Wayne Watch program, it will be a problem for many citizens. And it will cause more, an increase of visitation to the emergency room, because there's a lot of folk that can't pay for their medical expenses, and they really don't even have the funds to go before a one of those little centers that they have out. I do ask you to reconsider any cutting of the program. I do understand that there are some bad apples that have caused a problem, but it's too many of us who don't have insurance, who really depend upon the watch to give us the services that we need. I thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you on the 19th of May at Wayne County Library. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good morning. Thank you very much. Ralph Smiley, 419 Dogwood Trail. I spoke to you briefly in introduction, but two things that I'd like to address today. Your discussion on appropriations and budgeting on the nonprofit receiving federal tax monies. The Mental Health Association has never received, in my 15, 20 years, any federal or state appropriations addressed particularly mental health. We are well aware and appreciate that the county commissioners, when Eastgate was set up on the shared bit, we've received some appropriations 3 years ago that have helped us survive, in effect, bankruptcy. But we continue to raise money through the cooperating with the Knights of Columbus and Tootsie Roll by having some yard sales and by occasional dinners. Received enough money to keep going, but we would like to definitely be considered to receive county monies because it is a county-wide Wayne County organization. On the other side, I commented recently, John and I fare well in our second careers as retirees. Many veterans, short-term and long-term, have apparently not. I am hurt when I see these men sitting and standing on the corners of our county and city. And I feel like I ought to stop and introduce myself and try to find out what the problem is. But the VA is receiving, and veterans are receiving a lot of attention. But we have obviously a problem here in the city and county that we need to give more attention to. The food kitchens and the church programs to the youth have been great, but we still have an ongoing visible problem in mental health in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Smiley. Anyone else have any comments?
Tom Drew, P.O. Box 587, zip 27533. First priority is update on the amended election protest of the 2014 elections. Absent any known response from the county or state board of elections to the absence of appropriate procedures in the statutes to go forward with that amended protest, one option is to file a motion in Wayne Superior Court, petition for judicial review to review that. Also, I've come to understand there is currently a legislative oversight committee in Raleigh addressing county and state boards of elections and all laws involved. That's effort to secure the most valuable word to education, democracy, the word forum. The forum is a collaborative effort among all 10 education systems to advance education. You may not have the discipline for group research. And there's some folks that don't have the discipline for independent research, though the forum is where they complement each other. Last night, Board of Education tried to advance the history of the forum on the question. Even last week you thought that was old news. This is even more old news of the history. When I first started publishing in '97, the question, is the heart a voluntary, involuntary, both, neither, or other muscle? I still need to find out from Joe Gurley or Dr. Grant when they gave the presentation June last year, Wayne County cardiac arrest success rate arrival at the hospital, 911, was about 18%. Seattle, Washington was the high, we were average to the nation, but Seattle, Washington was up around 25%. That's the difference between 1 out of 5 and 1 out of 4 surviving. When this forum's successful, hopefully Wayne County will be on the map for the right reasons. We'll get it up to a 33.3% success rate. That's 1 out of 3 arriving alive. And Dean and 2 where was the Samaritan going that day? Injured, as she knowing the way, please.
Thank you. About it. Oh, you want not put in a break.
See, I'm learning.
We are, next item, Mr. Powers, give us an update on the, make some comments on the radio system. Good morning.
The time up. So, radio's cut everybody over, all the end users. The new. Did want to talk about just for a second. It had it found complaints was on it from some of the radios we have out there. So they started checking the programming on that. They couldn't find an issue. They kept investigating it. Probably around 1:30. It started. They started seeing it themselves. Some more investigations out that we that was a channel. The control channel is the channel that says when it sees some interference, another switch out control channels. They were seeing that channel in 3 and 4 minutes. Most of the newer keep up with it. It was not a portable 2-minute register on the system. That's about 2 o'clock and the system so that the count was stabilized and was gating what we got some now doing just that. 2:30 one stage we stabilized and we hadn't had.
But it was the older.
Yes, sir. What we found, control channel, when it changes, it's going to tell me where to talk. The new E.F. Johnson spot, the older rate and a half is re-register them, and by the time it would do that, it would rotate channel. So that's where most of the issue. The majority and goes for fire made aware. No, investigating that. We want to look at all makers and
I think I'm going to say is what the biggest concern is all that we see now to go into community college. According to the article on the UHF,
no, on VHF.
VHF says UHF, but still have not made any efforts to megahertz channel.
No, so to be honest with you, 800 are having interference issues as well.
John and Wake solve their issue. Here's what I'm going to say, what I know, just facts. Of course, the newspaper, the weather, but fog, the big issue, HF channels, and of chemical fog and frog. You've heard that before?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, cloud cover,
Yeah.
fog and cloud cover where it's all over the place.
Greg Fischel says that in especially eastern storm and it stopped fog. Fog causes hop around fog, technical term, but Wake and what they did, they had on the 8 because 800 megahertz rate fog. I have credible evidence for these counties that that's how they saw with weather. Asking RCC or someone may be looking at it, and they're saying they're good heart because it's happened in Wayne County over the last month or so. I'm not being critical saying that it's really, really more emergency now for us to get it up and running. For it to ever happen in an emergency like that, that's what I'm concerned with. But otherwise, I've seen a lot of progress. I'm down at other similar, and just make note of what I've heard. Critical is according to using VHF.
Yes, sir. And all bands are going to have some type of issue with cloud cover, heat inversions, or say that 800 megahertz does penetrate the weather a little bit better, but you have to look at the whole picture, just like first doing the radio system. But we also know 800 megahertz will not penetrate a building as well as VHF. It also doesn't go as far as VHF. So if we went 800, we would have to send because this county could not be covered with 7. I mean, power sites when we look at 800. So you got to look at what you're trying to accomplish. 800 penetrate weather, penetrate buildings better. You don't have as much coverage inside with 800 megahertz. You also don't go the distance with 800 megahertz as you do VHF or UHF.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly.
Is there a possibility that you could have and VHF channels and or so? In other words, I've heard of some counties running sort of a parallel system, if you will. They have their own identity in their system, like we have with VHF. But is there a way that we can channel up with the 800 megahertz that in certain situations we could switch over and talk to Viper?
Sir, we actually, and we'll go back to what you had brought up with the Wayne Community College active shooter. When I arrived on the scene, we had local law enforcement. We moved them over to the Wayne County Law Enforcement Talk Group, which is on our VHF system. We started getting North Carolina Highway Patrol, ALE, and ATF responding as well. They are on 800 megahertz Viper system. Sergeant Burton, First Sergeant Burton with Highway Patrol come to me and said, is there any way we can patch together? He gave me, I think we used Bravo 1 was the talk group for Viper. In about 3 minutes I made a phone call and we patched Bravo 1 Viper into our county system. And so now everybody on 800 megahertz radios and everybody on VHF radios were talking together, 800 and VHF. So that is a possibility. We do that as a temporary patch.
I think you've already taken care of that then.
Yes, sir. It's already been tried to. It was tested on the real scene at the active shooter at Wayne Community College. We do have that capability now. We have 2 consulates that are sitting, 800 megahertz consulates that are hanging in the system that the dispatchers can go to any talk group on Viper and patch to any talk group on VHF.
So that should solve our issue as far as most of the problems we have with weather. It's not going to solve it all, but my understanding is that the 800 megahertz penetrates fog and clouds a lot better than any other.
Yes, sir. We do have that capability
okay.
now.
All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Bell.
I'm going to make a comment here. I've used radios all of my whole professional career. I have never seen a perfect radio system that's going to give you 100% of the time. You're going to find spots where stuff is not going to work. So I think our people need to be aware of that he may go in one location. I know when I used to go out to the Eureka and all that area, it was very difficult to talk to the Goldsboro Police Department. So you're not going to find a 100% perfect radio system.
No, sir. And I will say, like I said before, we cut on the new system in the county in December because we did want to test it alongside the system we were using for at least 60 days to make sure that nothing was going to jump out and surprise us. So that system has been in operation since December, and this was the first issue we had Friday. And once they changed the parameters to stop the control channels from rolling, we saw that issue kind of resolved itself.
Mel, you might want to mention, because there is not a perfect radio system, and all of them are susceptible to interferences. And give the analogy, was it probably about 2 years ago when we got a statewide inversion, and all the microwaves on the state Viper system went down, and all the 800 went down. Of course, the VHF stayed up, but.
And it was really interesting. We did get notification from the state that with this inversion, it was actually rolling through the state. And they were going through each county and saying at this time, the 800 system is going to go down because of the weather inversion. It was disrupting the microwave system. And as you watched it on the satellite, as you watched this inversion go through, you were seeing 800 megahertz Viper drop off. And as it passed, they were coming back online.
And in addition to that, the Viper originally started out in Decision, Ray Broggan, you know what that's about, and Johnson County as well. And both are good radio systems, but they're both 20 years old or older. So us being our infant stages, I'm proud of what we've done.
Yes, sir. And again, we are still investigating the issue that we had Friday. RCC was in the county Friday. They're in the county yesterday and today. They are investigating it. We've got a few things we're looking at. And again, Commissioner Gurley, as soon as we finish and finalize, we'll get a report to the commissioners, and we want to get a report to the other affected agencies.
Very good. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Page.
Ayers about halfway stopped at it. Early on, did you say Hood Swamp area had a problem?
Yes, sir. What we found, all the tower sites in the county was getting some information, some interference.
So I guess my question is, was that New Hope or was that Sawston, or did they have the older?
New Hope is the new tower site. Hood Swamp Road, I think the paper said Boc Swamp, but it was New Hope tower site.
They got the newer.
That's a new site, yes, sir.
Yeah. But I'm talking about the radios that the firefighters have. They've got new radios.
Yes, sir. They've got the Harris radios.
Okay.
To my knowledge, I've had no phone calls from any of our county agencies. I mean, I talked to a fire chief last night, and he said he never had an issue that, you know.
Well, I talked to my fire chiefs, and I told them, I said, call me, give me the good, bad, or ugly, or, you know, whatever. And I hadn't heard from any of them, so. And my group will complain if there's a real problem.
Goldsboro Police Department was our very last, because they were one of the largest that we were going to have to try to transfer over to the new system. And again, one of the things we're looking at is we've not had an issue until we did that.
Put them on.
Yes, sir. And then we got this
They have
interference.
some of the older equipment.
And
Yes, sir.
Mel, since you mentioned Wings Over Wayne, explain to them the joint operation out there be going on in the radio system, if you will.
Yes, sir. What we've done, and we're working on the 205 with the ICS form for the communications plan. And what we're looking at, we are going to have Viper, and we're going to work alongside Viper, Seymour Johnson's UHF system, and our VHF system. So we've already got the 205 plan already down. We've got it mapped out to where we'll have fire and EMS on one band, we'll have law enforcement on the other band. They'll stay in their own lanes of travel unless something happens. And then we've got the capability at communications to patch everybody together so that we'll be able to have a unified command with interoperability at the air show.
And that's the open architecture part that we've been stressing for so long.
That's that P25 that we've been stressing for a while.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Mel, we have never had that luxury before.
We have never had interoperability with Seymour Johnson or with 800 since I've been in the county.
Mr. Doherty.
It's my understanding, I don't know what happened on Friday, but there was some weather issues, and it's my understanding that Viper, in fact, did have some similar issues. Am I correct?
I did talk with one person. He said that they were seeing some issues as well.
So, and the other thing is, my understanding was that Harris offered to upgrade all the radios at a 50%, almost a 50% discount through the end of the year. Do you know whether or not Goldsboro took advantage of that?
Goldsboro Fire Department did, yes, sir.
Fire Department did?
Yes, sir.
Did the police department?
Yes, sir.
And the last question, and that is my understanding, those radios that are the new generation actually kept up with the transfer?
It's my understanding from RCC that the new radios, the E.F. Johnson, New Vikings,
Right.
and the Harris XG75s did keep up with the rolling. Now, they did see some issues with them, but nothing like the older equipment.
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mayor.
Just have, when is the next projected date of completion of the system? I know that it's been because of weather and
It's
everything.
complete.
It's complete? Okay.
It's been up and running.
Yes.
Okay.
This is the first interference we've had with it.
Right.
But it's up and running. It's been up and running.
We are doing some work on the consoles. The commissioners about 6-8 months ago graciously let us replace the radio consoles for the new system. We've got those up, and we are working on those now. So as far as radio system for our first responders out in the field, it is up and running. For the dispatchers, we've got the new consoles in, and we're just doing some work on those now.
Okay, finally, Mr. Chairman, if I could, I just as a matter of inside communications, what is any couple of tests here and there been run on inside communications yet?
Commissioner Mayo, for about 3 weeks, that's all my staff did, was go out and test. In fact, we put new radios on a new system in the hands of end users and asked them to go out and test as well. Some of our biggest voices in the county, we give them portables to go out and test. And to be honest with you, we have not really had any complaints on coverage.
Did you go to the schools? Did you go to
Yes, sir.
Walmart,
Yes,
in the
sir.
middle of Walmart and
Yes,
these
sir.
buildings that we have not had inside communication in the
Yes, sir.
past?
They actually went through the list of emails they had gotten about complaints on the old system.
Yeah.
Since February of 2013, we pulled all those emails
Well,
out.
as you know, that was one of my biggest questions, when we went into the new contract is inside communication, because we've had some outside
I
communication,
think
but
one or
it's
two
been
of those
up and
emails
down.
were yours.
Sir?
I think one or two of those emails were yours.
But thank you. There has been a tremendous amount of progress.
Yes, sir.
Look, like I said, I'm asking these questions with a good heart. There's nothing intended here.
Yes, sir. We actually included the first responders when the staff went out. We actually included first responders to go out with us. In fact, when we were doing the final coverage testing, the OES department did not go out on any of the testing. We actually brought in outside agencies such as fire department, sheriff's office, animal control, facility services. We actually brought them in and let them do the testing with RCC. OES did not go out and do any testing of the system for the coverage testing.
Okay. Thank you. Good job.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you, and I think most of my questions have probably been answered because Mr. Mayo has such a wide range of understanding about the radios. But I just wanted to go back to something. You mentioned that when you were watching the radar, you could see it rolling across the state in sort of some kind of a systematic, everybody was having the same trouble. It was going from east to west, north to
Yes,
south.
it was actually going from west to east.
West to
It
east.
was
West
going
to
west
east.
to east.
Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but, you know, I can't help but have a little dabble in it. Do you think it could have been some organized interference by some?
Higher power, yeah.
Anything and everything's possible.
Be careful there where we place blame.
I don't want to jump to the high power. I was going to jump to somebody who may be real, very serious, somebody with some organized interference, you know, our enemies,
On
cyber
that-
attack, thank you, that's what I'm trying to say.
On that instance, a couple years ago, when we actually watched on the weather radar, we watched the inversion go, and as the heat inversion was going through, we were watching it disrupt the microwave systems.
Last thing, maybe sort of in relationship to what Mr. Mayor was asking. It sounds like with the system you have now, what Mr. Mayor was asked about the 800, it sounds like it would handle weather a little bit better, but it sounds like what you have now would handle the inside.
That was our understanding at the very beginning.
Therefore, in a percentage kind of a basis, are you more concerned about the inside or versus the weather when the weather might be bad? I mean, you got my question.
Yes, sir, and I think we do have those situations with weather, but that doesn't happen near as often as we send our responders in the buildings.
That's what I was, that's the very idea. I mean, thank you, because I thought you could see that there. I didn't know where I was asking it clear enough so that you could, that's exactly the point you made. So we have something that we're going, in place, that we're going to have the most need, I mean, the most recognition of the most problematic, or this might happen most often. And thank goodness, I mean, we can't do a thing about the weather, and we pray that it don't jump on us too bad. But you have what you need the most.
Yes, sir. And what Commissioner Mayo was saying, this Friday, I know it was unfortunate it happened, but it also gives us a planning tool so that if we do start seeing weather, and of course, you know, that was everybody's dream job is to be 50-50, right or wrong, you still get paid, and that's the weather forecaster. So we can monitor the weather, and if we see that we're going to have issues and we know it may have some interference on us, we may have those plans in place that we can switch them over, do some patching to get us through those times. But it's going to take those Fridays for us to investigate to be able to do plans of that nature.
Mr. Chairman, can we ask Mel, just for 2 or 3 minutes, real quickly as possible, give some extensive measures and models y'all used in the testing modes?
As far as when we did coverage testing?
Yeah.
It was, first we did what we call a BER test, a bit error rate test. That's a computer-generated test. And so what they did was they put a computer in a car, and it was really interesting, and they attenuate the antenna or reduce the power of the input to mimic indoor coverage. And then we give them a map, we send them out with, sometimes at sheriff's office, animal control, facilities, someone from the fire service, and they just drove every road in the county that they could get to. As they were driving, this computer model generated what the bit error rate was. And remember, in analog times of the old system, it was all airwaves. This is all computerized. That portable radio you have is nothing more than a miniature computer. And when you talk into it, it's sending zeros and ones in the airways. It gets to that control channel, and that computer deciphers it and then regenerates your voice. So it's looking at how many times it drops zeros and ones. We didn't have a whole lot of red on the map. It was real good coverage. Now, once that was taken care of and we did that bit error rate test, that give us the map coverage that the computer said, this is where your shortcomings are, this is where we think you're good. Then we did what we called voice quality testing. So we took those same players that we have at RCC, we sent them out, and we had a recording of it's sentences from Harvard University that says that it checks every tone in anybody's voice, and it's very hard to misunderstand what they're saying. And this is from a Harvard professor. And so they would actually play those recordings back to dispatch. Dispatch would rate how they heard it, and then dispatch would play the same recording back to the ones in the field, and they would rate how they recorded it. Scale from 0 to 5, 5 being very good. And on all that we tested, I don't think we got anywhere under a 4 that we tested.
And Mr. Chairman, one last thing, thank Mr. Wood for allowing those other county departments to assist OES in the measuring. It was very helpful for these people and for other people to get a good view of what's going on too.
Okay. Anyone else?
One last comment. Under the old system, there was a lot of complaints out of my section of the country, of the county. And I can assure you that if it wasn't working, I'd continue to have those. I am not having those calls. So evidently that my section of the county seems to be very pleased with the new system.
We actually gave a specific talk group to that section and said test it out, and we didn't get any complaints.
Well, I think there was enough radio checks over the last week from Mike Scafari to say that
Yes, sir.
undoubtedly they must be pleased.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I was going to try to limit this, but others have made comments, so I'm going to close with a couple. As being fire commissioner, I asked could I have a radio when we started switching over with the radio system. I have one of the new radios, and as y'all know, I've asked Mr. Wood to try to limit our activity up here on Fridays. So that happened on a Friday, so I happened to have my radio with me all day. I did not have any problem at all with the radio. Now, I didn't talk on it now, but I'm listening. Also, I was very proud the other night, I was listening to it. The city of Goldsboro had a working structural fire, 2-story building. I was sitting in my house in the northwest corner of the county, and I could hear the interior firefighters. You could tell that they had their self-contained breathing apparatus on because of the tone of their voice, but they were just as clear as our dispatcher was. And I was very proud of the fact that Goldsboro had that type of coverage on the fire calls. And one last thing, I'm also associated with a fire department that has radio equipment with Johnson County. Johnson County's system's not perfect either. Thank you.
One last question.
Yes, sir.
Do you see any value that the other commissioners here that might have access to one of those radios, just to carry it around and listen to it for a little while so we get everybody else?
If you would like to listen to all the radio traffic, yes, sir, we'll be definitely to program it up for you.
You will cut it off at night, I can assure you of that.
soon as you come
I'm
see me,
serious about
come
it.
by. Yes, sir.
Can I
I'm
make
serious
sure
about it.
it's programmed like I want?
Well, for Commissioner Gurley, we'll just put Guzman Police Department on
No, no,
his,
no.
and he won't be able to change it.
I don't want one. I just want to make sure everybody else is programmed.
Okay.
You got one that's on.
The only thing that I ask,
That's what I.
we've told the end users this and all the first responders, just like with Friday, if there is an issue, please call OES. If we don't know there's an issue, then we can investigate it and fix it. So please, any of the public safety, anybody using the radio system, if you see an issue, whether you think it's a small issue or a large issue, please let us know. Call us, email us, let us know that you see an issue so that we can send the technicians out there to investigate it. Because sometimes them little small issues may wind up being a bigger issue than we thought.
And we certainly want the emails to keep on coming, but if you have an immediate problem, pick the phone up and call somebody.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Wood, item number 5.
Okay. You have in your packet, starting at page 100, a memo that I've given you on pay plan revisions. And I'm going to paraphrase some of the stuff I put in here for the benefit of the public. At the budget retreat in early January, you asked that I give you a recommendation for a position classification plan and policies to administer it. North Carolina General Statute 153A92 authorizes boards of commissioners to, quote, fix or approve the schedule of pay, expense allowances, and other compensation of all county officers and employees, whether elected or appointed, and may adopt position classification plans, end quote. Attachment 1, which is about 4 pages back, is the state statute that I just referenced. So I wanted to give you that where you could read that over if you wanted to. There is also a second one that deals with compensation of boards of commissioners, so that you understand what the process is for that. And then the next thing is personnel rules, office hours, work days, and holidays, and that's attachment 2. In addition, North Carolina General Statute 153A94 authorizes boards of commissioners to adopt or provide for rules and regulations or ordinances that cover personnel policies and any other measures that promote the hiring and retention of capable, diligent, and honest career employees. And again, that's attachment 2. You've already adopted personnel rules and regulations. We would need to amend them to conform the section that deals with the pay plan if you agree to this proposed policy change. The current position classification plan is based upon assigning each position or job classification to a specific grade and then having 19 steps of 2.5% within each grade. There's a 5% differential between each grade. And attachment number 3, which is on page 108, I'd like to go over with you for just a minute. This is the current salary matrix. You'll see that there's the levels going down. The left-hand side of the column, the first column, starts at 52 and goes through 99. That's the grades. So each position, for instance, if we did the county clerk, that she would be assigned to a specific number there. Let's say, for instance, it was 75. Then the pay grade would be between 49,828, and then you go all the way over to the right-hand column to 77,715. And those are 19 2.5% steps going across. Is everybody clear on that? I know several of you have been state employees, so you're very accustomed. Ed, you're probably accustomed to seeing it at the school board. This is a standard type governmental pay plan. So the grades go down. They're the numeric number going down. The steps are the numeric number going across, and you'll see there's 19 of those, okay? So I'd like you to keep that in mind as we start discussing this and going into detail on it. There are 3 components to a position classification plan and its administration. Number 1 is a listing of each position classification assigned to a pay grade with a beginning and ending point. And that's what we just talked about right there. Number 2 are the job descriptions for each job classification. And number 3 are the written policies within the county's personnel rules and regulations that detail how the plan components will be updated and how merit increases or other compensation will be awarded. So let's go over those 3. The Human Resources Department prepares and updates a position or job description for each position. That component is already in place and needs no further action. And what I'm proposing to you is we continue with the policy we have now where the HR director can make amendments to those job descriptions with approval by either the assistant manager or myself. We don't want to be in a position where we have to bring every minor tweak of a job description back to you. Now, if you want us to do that, we can, but I think that's a waste of your time. At the next Board of Commissioners meeting, I'll be presenting you with the portion of the position classification plan that shows the assigned pay for each position, and it'll have a beginning, a midpoint, and a maximum. And we almost had that ready for this meeting, but we needed to tweak a couple more things, but we will have that at the next meeting for your adoption. This memorandum will provide the third component, and that's an overview of the proposed policies to administer the plan. Before getting into the specific details of the recommended policy, I need to provide some background on the major issues involved in a position classification plan. First, the plan must be flexible enough so that it works in any fiscal year, whether revenues are growing well or barely growing. Second, it should reward the best performers within the organization rather than disregard performance and give everyone the same raise. When you give, for instance, a COLA, everybody gets the same amount of pay whether they're doing an exceptional job or a poor job. Third, it must provide a means to increase the compensation for particular positions when the county documents that those positions are underpaid compared to the relevant job market. Fourth, pay for each position should be based upon what comparable jobs are paid in the job market, not on whether the pay seems too low or high. We all want everyone to make a reasonable salary, but some jobs are low paying in the marketplace, and the taxpayer should not be expected to pay more than the job market requires. For example, if you have a janitorial position and in the private sector, in the job market, it's worth $10 an hour, then we ought not to be paying more than $10 an hour, even though some people may think that salary is low. It is, but that is the job market for that position. The U.S. economy has been struggling since the 2008 economic downturn. Growth in the property tax base and sales tax proceeds, which make up 49.5% of our general fund revenues, have been much lower than in previous years. Our citizens' take-home pay growth has also been slower. State government has seized all of the ADM funding for education, about half of the education lottery funding, and has mandated costly changes such as DUI incarceration in county jails. All of this has resulted in several years of no raises and only a $500 bonus in fiscal year 2015. One of the key issues with the current pay plan is that the merit steps are 2.5% going across, as we showed you on that matrix. The county has not been in a position to grant such raises given the tight economic times. Instead, an informal policy has resulted in which department heads ask for merit raises for some employees each year. That, in my opinion, is not a fair system. We need a plan that allows the BOC to set the amount of raises it can afford in each fiscal year as part of its budget adoption. Then all employees would be considered for part of that funding. The plan I am proposing does that. I've worked with the Assistant County Manager, Human Resources Director, and Finance Director to develop this plan. In addition, I've discussed it with 3 of the largest departments in the county, and their department heads were very favorable toward it. The plan I'm recommending to you is as follows. 1, each position would be assigned to a grade that consists of only the beginning, midpoint, and ending point pay. The current 19-step plan would be replaced with only those 3 steps. These 3 steps would be taken off of the existing plan, so no current pay would be affected. In other words, going back to my example, if the county clerk were at grade 75, we wouldn't have 19 steps anymore, but she would have the same beginning, midpoint, and ending point as it has today. So nobody's pay is going to be cut or affected in any way like that. Is everybody clear on that?
So rather than having 19 steps, you're gonna have
3. And it'll just be the beginning, midpoint, and end point. And the only reason for the midpoint is to show you, as you get into that mid area, where are they? It just helps break it up a little bit. Okay. In each,
I'm sorry.
well,
Let me, oh, go ahead.
well, what I was gonna suggest is if y'all will let me go through the whole thing, I probably am gonna answer your questions. Then if I don't, we can come back to questions, okay? Number 2, in each proposed budget, the county manager would propose a percentage of salaries and benefits to go into a pool for each department. And I didn't say it here, but the pool would be equal in each department. In other words, whatever I recommend to you, and the example I use here is a 1.5% pool, every department would get the same 1.5% pool. So they're all being treated equally, okay? For example, if the manager recommended a 1.5% pool, each department head would get that amount of money to cover 1.5% of wages and benefits for his department, except for the department head's wages, which would go into a pool for the county manager and assistant county manager to determine. Obviously, we can't have department heads determining their own level of raise. We would be doing that. 3, there would be a rule determined each year, and it would have to be each year because the amount of raise you're going to give is going to be determined by this board. I'm going to make a recommendation to you, but you'll determine what amount we're going to put in as the raises. So there'd be a rule determined each year for the maximum percentage raise any one employee could receive. For instance, in the example above, if the pool is 1.5%, the maximum any one employee could receive might be set at 1.75%. Keep in mind that if one or more employees get more than the average 1.5%, some employees would have to get less. The department head must stay within the 1.5% pool of money for raises. Raises would be determined based upon an annual evaluation of each employee, which would be done in July and the first half of August. Different dates would apply for DSS and the health department because they already have to do evaluations required by the state, and usually those are earlier in the year. So we don't want to duplicate that process. And they would use the evaluation form that the state requires. They wouldn't use ours. The evaluations would be done by supervisors and department heads using a form to be developed by the HR department. The HR department would provide mandatory training to all supervisors and department heads before this process is begun. An employee would have had to be employed since December 31st of the previous year to be eligible for the increase. In other words, we're saying if you haven't been with us 6 months, you're not eligible for an increase. Okay. Only full-time employees would be eligible for merit increases. Part-time employees' pay would be adjusted as appropriate during the budget process based upon a review of the hourly rate. Each department head would be given a standardized spreadsheet that will be prepared by the finance department that shows each departmental employee's current annual pay and benefits that are tied to pay. And what those are is FICA, Social Security, the North Carolina retirement, and we pay 6% in on our, actually that fluctuates. They pay 6%, ours fluctuates. Then we have the 5% law enforcement officer separation allowance for sworn officers, and then a 2% 401k for those that participate in it. The 2% 401k that the county has says we will reimburse up to 2% of your salary, but people have to, we're matching what they put in. So if they don't put anything in, we don't pay into it. The pool of available funding would be provided on that sheet. So we give them, we list every employee We give them the amount of money, we give them the pool, at the current salary, then we give them the pool of money they have. And then they would have to fill out that sheet and turn it into the finance department, which would assure the pool amount had not been exceeded. So that's our check to make sure the department head did it correctly. And again, we'll have the accountants in the finance department double check those spreadsheets. From there, the HR department and assistant county manager, and the reason he's there is he supervises HR, would review the evaluations compared to the level of raises given to assure that each increase reflects accurately how the employee's performance was rated. What I mean by that is that if you rate an employee as average, you can't give them an above average raise. If you rate them as poor, you can't give them an average raise. If you rate them as exceptional, you can't give them a poor amount of money. And so the job description has to reflect, in other words, the rating has to reflect what the raise was. That's what they're going to be looking for. Okay. This review would be completed no later than September the 10th so that the raises could become effective on September paychecks. They're issued on September 25th. The reason I put the 10th is we typically have payroll, we like to have it processed close to the 15th because there are some other steps involved in getting it out. To address the issue of bringing underpaid positions up to the relevant job market, the county manager would recommend a portion of the funding for pay adjustments in each budget be put in a contingency line item. During the fiscal year, the HR director, assistant county manager, and county manager would make recommendations to the BOC based on relevant job market research for changes in the grade of positions as needed. Since the Board of Commissioners would have adopted by resolution the position classification plan that assigns each job to a pay grade, any change approved by the Board of Commissioners would be done by a resolution. This assures that no pay grade is increased or decreased without the approval of the Board of Commissioners. And that way we have a written record of each such change. Now, in the past, you haven't been doing that, and you haven't adopted the classification plan. It's been done administratively. But this is how it ought to be done. And this assures you that nobody is arbitrarily going in and changing the pay plan. Okay. There is no way that all underpaid positions could be brought up to market within 1 year. This will be an ongoing process looking at what our most critical needs are. One good measure of that is how much turnover a department is having. Difficult choices will have to be made as we have limited resources. But over a period of years, we can correct many retention issues using this method. Bear in mind that sometimes when one position classification has to be upgraded, others do as well. For example, in the Emergency Medical Services Department, we have 3 levels of employees requiring different levels of training and certification. A beginning employee is an EMT, which is an emergency medical technician. The next higher is an EMT intermediate. The highest is a paramedic. There are higher grades assigned in ascending order to reflect the higher skills. If we determine that EMTs are underpaid, the same will apply to the EMT intermediates and paramedics. That means that most of that department would be reclassified to a higher grade of pay. In other cases, there may be only one position in a classification, which would be inexpensive to correct. Again, using the example of the county clerk, there's only one position. So if you do a study on the county clerk and find it's low, that affects one position. That's not very costly. But I just wanted to explain that to you, that there are some departments that are hierarchical in nature. And the problem is if you don't give people have a differential in pay between an EMT and an intermediate, and you just kept them at an EMT, we're going to be a training ground, and as these people become more well certified and qualified, other counties are going to come and recruit them away from us if we don't do that. The same would apply, for instance, in the Sheriff's Department. That's a hierarchical organization. You know, you have patrol officers, corporals, sergeants, lieutenants, captains, major, and then the sheriff. So And the same thing with the jailers. Okay. Again, if we don't keep our pay plan current, we become a training ground for some positions, and other counties will lure our employees away. There is a cost to this turnover and loss of experienced personnel. The department heads appointed by the county manager would be evaluated by the county manager and assistant county manager, with each evaluating those he directly supervises. I've given you the list of how I broke those duties out as to what departments I've retained and what I've delegated over to Mr. Burns. The BOC would evaluate the county manager, the county clerk, and the county attorney as you appoint and supervise all three of those. The DSS board and health board appoint and supervise the directors of those departments. Those boards would make a recommendation to the county manager, who would review that and make a recommendation to the BOC for final determination. The Board of Election Supervisor is appointed by the state election supervisor, but answers to the local Board of Elections. That board would make a recommendation to the county manager, who would review that and make a recommendation to the BOC for final determination. We have two elected department heads, and that's the sheriff and the register of deeds. Those positions would be given raises by the BOC with a recommendation from the county manager. Again, I do not supervise them because they're elected officials, but the law says you set their salary, you set the compensation. In each proposed budget, the county manager would make a recommendation to the BOC on one, the percentage of wages and benefits that would be appropriated for merit raises in the next fiscal year, and two, the dollar amount recommended as a contingency line item for possible position reclassifications based upon studies of the relevant job market. So that pool would be for where we think specific job classifications are underpaid and need to be regraded or reclassified. If you approve this recommended policy, we will prepare the necessary changes to the personnel rules and regulations, propose in the fiscal 2016 budget a percentage of wages and benefits pool and a contingency amount for position reclassifications for underpaid positions. Develop the job evaluations and do the training on that, and then prepare the standardized spreadsheet for submission of departmental merit raises. As I said earlier, at the next BOC meeting, we will provide the position classification plan component that assigns each position to a pay grade for your adoption by resolution. This would complete the necessary steps to implement a solid position classification plan that addresses all four of the major issues outlined above. And as I said, the difference in going to a banding, that's what this is called, a banding system, is if you can't afford the 2.5% steps, you don't have to, if you go to this system, you don't have to go 2.5% or nothing. You can go, as the example I cited, if you go 1.5%, because the steps aren't in concrete. There are no steps in concrete. It's just a beginning point and an end point. And again, what they get is determined by the evaluation, but the amount of money that's set aside to go with that raise is determined by you after I make a recommendation to you in the budget. And once that's another reason why the evaluations wait until July, is we don't know what the pool is until you vote on the budget. Because I recommend, but you're the ones who make the decision on what that will be. And then if we do some studies based on where we think jobs are low, based on turnover, those types of things, we would come back to you throughout the year on that. And we would give you an explanation of what we've done, show you the studies, the comparable counties, if they are positions where we compare to counties. If it's clerical, we wouldn't necessarily do that. We could look at what the local market is for secretaries and things like that. That's why I'm using the phrase relevant job market, because it depends. If you're recruiting a department head, you probably want to look at what other counties are paying. Same thing with sheriff's deputies, EMTs, things like that. So that's basically the policy that I'm recommending to you. Again, if you adopt it, then we're prepared, and we have been discussing I do have some numbers in mind, but I'm not prepared to go over those at this point. I'll do that when we finish the budget, because I'm not through with the budget yet, and I need to make sure what I recommend is what we can afford.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mayor.
Do we do a yearly evaluation now on each employee?
No.
Okay, so in my experience in the private sector, this system is only going to work as good as the supervisors and department heads that are evaluating these employees. So there's going to be a lot of training going on. Am I correct?
Yeah, I said in here, we'll develop the form and then do mandatory training with it.
Because the whole success of this is going to be how fair and equally that the supervisors and directors can evaluate people.
That's right. And part of our evaluation of each department head will be how well did they do that job.
Well, we have a old saying in the private sector, just because we go fishing on Saturday and Sunday don't mean you get a raise on Monday.
That's right.
So, but that's critical. You got to have good management that is not partial, that have a certain set of guidelines for evaluations.
Right.
And in that way it'll work. That's
Right.
what we have in our company.
Right.
Merit raises only is what we're talking about.
Right. The reason I don't want to go with COLAs is the issue we have, I think we all know we have some positions that are underpaid relative to where we ought to be. You have some positions that are not underpaid. If you go with a straight COLA, you do, the negative, the positive to a COLA is you're keeping your pay plan up to date so that your entry level pay is hopefully staying with the market. However, what a COLA does is if someone's already at market and you go up another 2% on the COLA, you're actually overpaying that position. You would not, the assumption with a COLA is that all of the positions are where they ought to be in the market. And so you're just taking everything up 2% to match inflation. And that's not the case. What you have is you have some positions that are at market and you have others that are below market. And if you have limited resources, which every county does, you need to put the money where the problem is. And the problem is where we have those underpaid positions. And that's all we can afford to do. So you do that, and then the raises you give are based on merit. So, and if you go back to the 4 criteria that I said a pay plan should meet, this meets all of them because it's totally flexible. The plan you have now is inflexible. You either have to come up with 2.5% to give merit increases, or you can't afford, or you can't give them because you don't have a step below that. And we're not in a position to give those kinds of raises, and haven't been for years, which is why they haven't been being done, or they were done sporadically for a few employees in any given year.
Mr. Doherty.
Several questions. First, do you know how many years it's been since our employees have gotten a raise, other than this $500 bonus that was given?
Pam?
Around three.
From 3 or 4?
Yes, sir.
3 or 4 years ago?
Yes, sir.
Next, once you make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners on the percentage pool, are you also going to be giving us the dollar amount cumulative for the entire?
Yeah.
In other words, it's 1%, or we're using a 1.5%. But if it's 1.5% for a smaller department, the dollar amount's going to be much less than it would be for the sheriff's
Correct.
department.
What I'm going to give you is the aggregate amount.
Okay.
In other words, I'm going to say I recommend X%, and the impact on the budget is this many dollars.
I do have a little issue in regards to the December 31st, where an employee is not here a full year before a raise is given.
Right.
I do have an issue on that because that's generally not the case.
Generally, if they are here, sometimes they're here more than a year, but they've got to be here a minimum of a year.
Well, that's up to y'all. I mean,
I
if
got
you want,
full
if you
issue
want to
with it.
adopt it with a change on that, that's up to you.
But with that said, December 31st to the July, August, September timeframe
It's 9
goes
months.
beyond the 6 months, which is your probationary period, so it might be a good time to really look at it for those that measure up to it.
Because Joe makes a good point. Since it doesn't go into effect until September 1, they really, what we're saying is the cutoff's December 31, but you're not getting anything until September.
Yeah, you just might want to add the little thing, minimum of 12-month service or whatever, but anyway.
Okay.
And if I could go on further and get through my questions, then we'll turn it back over. The boards, and I noticed that when I was on the health board, but these boards are making a recommendation in regards to their department heads, their raise. I assume that we are letting them know what your recommendation is.
Yeah, I haven't made any yet.
I understand, but
I will.
There's a tendency of boards to somewhat go beyond what the county has given.
Right.
And we you know,
My feeling there is that.
they should conform with it.
They should conform closely to what you've got here. Bear in mind that that board is looking at that one employee, and they all think they're great.
Sure.
So, like you said, there tends to be a little grade inflation there.
Now, as I'm understanding, that's taking care of raises, merit raises.
These
are the only raises that are going to be provided.
This is it. Now, the one exception is that in this budget, I will continue, my recommendation to you is you continue the $500 bonus from last year. The reason for that is if you don't, then people are getting a pay cut.
I understand. Now,
Okay.
the next question I have
Okay,
is,
but let me follow
okay.
up on, but I'm not proposing you take that up. I'm proposing you go to this in the future.
Okay. And then there's another amount here that is longevity pay.
Yeah.
Is that being addressed here?
You capped longevity pay in 2009. You stopped it.
That's correct.
And so there's really nothing else to do there. What will happen is that will peter out over a period of years, because the only people eligible are people hired before 2009. Okay? And so my recommendation to you is simply leave that policy in place over a period of years through retirements, terminations, people take a new job, that'll wean down. And you'll see in this year's budget, some of those are going down.
And your recommendation on the percentage includes wages and benefits, so it's all inclusive.
Yeah, you have to do that because those 4 or 5, in other words, I've got to give you an accurate dollar figure that we can afford. And so that includes the FICA, all the things that are tied to salary. You'll notice health insurance isn't because it's a set amount, but anything that's tied to salary, if you take the salary up, those things are automatically going up.
Well,
So you got to account for them.
Agreed, but let's say we are at the point that you are making a recommendation.
Okay.
And you make that recommendation, people will need to understand that it's all inclusive. In other words, it's hard to compare apples and oranges here. If one organization in the county is giving a raise of 1% and we're giving a 1.5%, it may look like we're giving 1.5% raise, but we're really not, because the 1.5 includes all benefits as well.
Well, but the way I will phrase it to you is what's the pay? In other words, my recommendation to you will say, let's just say it was 1.5. And by the way,
I understand.
That's an example. But that will mean 1.5% increase in pay. When I give you the dollar figure, the benefits will be included.
Okay. So it will not be any confusion. It
No,
will
it
actually
be a
be the pay.
1.5% pay raise, because I want the employee to understand.
Well, I want the public to understand as
The public
well.
understand, but the pool will be, as that example would be, 1.5% increases in wages or salary, but we will include the necessary benefits that are tied to that in the dollar amount.
All right, one last question.
Okay.
The second pool, where we are trying to bring the salary of those positions that we're losing. We're losing valuable personnel here.
That's right.
So those, you're going to do an analysis to give us a reasonable expectation so we can target those people, the next year,
Right.
some more people.
But that's right. But the first year, I'm not gonna be, I want you to understand, I'm not gonna be ready at the end of May to make a recommendation on who those should be. That's why I just want a pool.
You just want a dollar.
And we'll put that in a contingency line item. If you recall, last year, we did that with the bonuses. We had a contingency line item for $500,000 for bonuses. And later, Pam went through and we decided what it would be for each employee. We did the calculations and it was a little under that. And so what I'm suggesting is we'll do the same thing, put a contingency line item, and we'll determine where that goes, probably in HR. And then, once we determine, we do a study and we come back to you, if you change one, and let's say the impact is $75,000, we'll do a budget amendment, and let's just say it was in emergency medical services. Pam would do a budget amendment to decrease the contingency line item by $75,000 and increase the line item over in EMS.
And then one last comment, and that is, oh, I'm sorry, I'm just going on, but my mind is working. Let me commend you for this proposal here, because for the first time in many, many, many years, our employees have got a policy in place. The board, whoever's sitting in these chairs can look at it from a standpoint of what the dollar amount's going to cost,
Right.
so that employees can look forward to actually having some type of a system that will allow them merit raises going forward.
Right.
And I think you've covered most of those, and I applaud you for it.
Well, I appreciate it. The one thing I did want to mention too, one of the concerns we have from employees, and it's valid, is when you don't give increases for 3 years or so, the person who was hired 3 years ago is at the same first step on that grade. We've hired somebody new the next year, they're making the same pay as the guy who has a year's experience. When we come along to third year, the first guy has 3 years of experience and he's making the same as the guy who just started. Now, when you have merit increases, if he got something every year, he is further along than the entry-level guy. That's right. So it'll also help with that. I should have mentioned that before, but and I appreciate your comments.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'll hog the floor.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, I think it's been a beautiful plan that you put together. Mr. Wood, if you like a cost of competition raise, I just flat out tell you, I am more in favor of a cost of living, and I'm here to explain why you're not in favor of that. But, you know, we are from different perspectives. As I hear explained, one of the goals here is to make sure we retain the most valued personnel. Or I think Mr. Darty said we're losing valuable personnel. Well, the one thing that I would like to know is what percentage of the quote-unquote valued personnel are we losing? And can we attribute that to just people moving out of the county, or there's a great job someplace else they're taking, not necessarily what is perceived as low wages? That's just a question. That's just a thought.
Can I address that?
Well, wait a minute.
Okay.
Well, not yet, because if you
Okay.
do, I'll lose my train of thought. That'll mess me up. The merit still has elements of subjectivity. I thought I always had a problem with that, and this is the reason I say that. You see, because sometimes I wonder how you're going to, apples and apples, or apples versus oranges. All these jobs are not alike. So you put a 1.5% pocket of money. A manager has to determine who's going to get some of that. Now, I'm not being facetious when I say this, but say you're cleaning toilets, and there's a certain way that you clean a toilet, and if it winds up being clean that morning, and at 12 o'clock it's clean, and it comes back and it's clean the next day, what magic are you going to do that's going to make that toilet 1.5% cleaner on the second day than it was the day that they cleaned it the first time? I hope that's I hope I'm not off in left field somewhere now, because my car run off the track sometime. But my point is, how do you determine what is above standard, at standard? Because I've heard people say, well, they keep doing it, they're doing their job, but they're doing it at that level. Some jobs you can't make better, because if you do it good, it's done. Cleaning the toilet is one of them. Mopping the floor is one of them. Changing out a 2x4 where it's rotten by the door, that's one of them. You're either going to change the 2x4 or you're not going to change it. But what's going to make that job so that you can identify that it deserves a merit? So that's because that subjectivity enters into it. And I did write down cost of competition versus cost of living. If we're looking for the person who may leave us because there's a better grass is greener over in another pasture, that's what I call a cost of competition raise versus what could be a cost of living. The bread and milk costs that guy that's doing that good standard job. That bread and milk is going to cost him the same thing as it costs that guy who might be coming in a little bit earlier, smile a little bit better, or gung-ho a little bit better, or can present himself to be doing better. But he's just doing that job. If you're doing it, you're doing it. Now, I'm going to close and give somebody else an opportunity to weigh in. And the jobs that I have been accustomed, the situation that I've been accustomed to, where I had to determine somebody's level of completeness. There's a standard that you must meet. My job as a monitor was to see if you were not meeting that job. But if you were meeting it, you're fine. But if you're not meeting it, I need to identify that. And if the person doesn't deserve a cost of living raise, it's either one thing, he's doing that flatline job and he's doing all he can do, or he's not doing it. And if he's not doing it, then he should be evaluated to show where he may need to be looking for a different job. Not that he'll stay without a cost of living because he's at a flatline job. All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Pate.
I'm sorry, you and I have always disagreed on this.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman.
I believe in the merit system, I really do. I think just giving a cost of living is just kind of a cop-out by supervisors not doing their job. That's my personal feeling. Now, is any HR system perfect? No. It's like we had a discussion a while ago about the radio system. Ain't none perfect. But you gotta have something. But what I would like to see, and during this evaluation process, if you're not establishing goals that you want this employee to meet, and this is what you got to do to exceed to be able to get a raise if money is available. Now, I don't know, you're going to do that on the front end, which I think you should, and/or you write a job development plan for that employee. For example, if we were doing your evaluation, I said, you're doing a great job, George, but I think you missed this and this, and I want to see you done to meet these goals next year and exceed them. Mm-hmm. And that's what you got to do.
And that should be part of the evaluation.
Well, that's just the way I look at it. And Ed and I, we've argued this point over and over again. But that's okay. We get it. That's democracy, right? Okay, I'm done.
Mr. Mayor.
Going back to the 6 months probation period, you also have 90-day probation. Also, is that right?
I think it's 6 months.
Okay, the private sector is 90 days.
Yeah, but in our rules and regulations, it's 6 months.
It's just a personnel policy we adopted.
Oh, okay.
We can change it, but it's just.
Okay.
it's
I
kind
thought
of-
the 90 days
I think
was
6 months is
That's the norm.
I prefer 6 months, because, you know, a lot of people can be on good behavior for 90 days.
Well,
I want to give them enough time, if they screw up, we can get rid of them.
yeah, well, my point is that if you have 90-day probation and an additional 6 months, you could lay that 6 months on top of the 90 days and make it 9 months. But since you have a 6 month evaluation,
No,
it won't
I
work.
think that's just a, you know, I put in that date, but that's a matter for y'all to determine what
Okay.
you want that date.
Yeah.
You know, on this proposal, you know, it can be a year, it can be 9 months, it can,
Okay.
you know, but there does need to be a date, because when we get in there, I don't want to have hired somebody in May, and next thing we know, you know, they're up for a merit increase. That would be ridiculous. So we need to have some date in there, but it's, you know, it's whatever y'all choose to do. I use 6 months. Pam, what did we do on the bonus last year? Do you recall? You had to be with us for a certain period of time.
I think it was active as of June 30th, and we did the bonus in August.
Okay. You had to be active, but we didn't put a minimum amount of time you had to be with us?
I think there was employed based on a certain date. Am I correct?
Well, but that's why I want a date in here, is we need to determine that, and whatever you think is reasonable is what, you know, and if we need to change that date, you can adopt this subject to changing that one provision.
Mr. Chairman, can I follow up with one? One question. You also are still gonna have the reclassification going on. If a person, in order to address this person that
Yeah.
is for whatever, in other words, their job may not change, but because of, hopefully they're gonna work hard enough and educate themselves and go to a reclassification process, promotion, if you will. But if they don't, then the area surveys of that position over the years is going to give them their standard of living increase. It will, because that's why we in private industry fill out a survey every year for the Wayne County Development Lines as to what we're paying for different classifications. So it's a matter of supply and demand as far as where the pay scale is.
That's right,
So-
and that's the relevant job market.
That
We're
is
saying the
correct.
same thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Uh,
I think, were you fixing to say something?
Well, I was, John, but you go ahead, and I'll
Well-
come back to it.
I like the merit system, as long as it doesn't turn into a buddy or friend
Right.
system.
Right.
You know, I've seen too many errors where the only people that got merit raises were the close
Right.
friends and associates with the managers and supervisors.
And if we start seeing that, you know, then that's a management issue for us to deal with.
Question.
Yeah.
Follow up on what he just said. If the department supervisor has made a decision on the evaluations, who he wants to give the 1.5% raise.
Right.
Are you gonna review those first to make sure that those are accurate evaluations? or-
HR and the assistant manager are gonna do that. They're gonna make sure that.
So you get a more objective.
Well, the check
look
and
at it
balance
as opposed
is
to
if
what
we
you're
see
talking about.
if the overall evaluation is good, then the merit increase ought to be in the category of good. If he rates him good and then gives him less money, then he messed up on the evaluation.
I just wanna make sure there was no set of eyes looking at that evaluation.
That'll be Geraldine and Tommy looking at that.
Look very good, okay.
Okay. Checking the dollar figures on the original spreadsheet will be finance's job. Because I want accounting people looking at that and make sure they plugged in the right numbers.
I just wanted to avoid what John was just speaking to.
Yeah,
Because that can't happen.
right. Let me go back, if I could, and address one of Ed's first comments. And that is, because he made a good point, is not all turnover is necessarily because it's underpaid. So we need to look at what is causing that turnover. I mean, somebody may have moved because their husband got a job or their wife got a job out of town, or a situation like with Aaron, you know, there's a family situation there. But what we need to do is, through exit interviews, is find out why, you know, and if we find out, for instance, that we've got deputy sheriffs leaving and they're going to a neighboring county, they're staying in the profession, but they're getting a $2,500 raise or something, that's kind of a wake-up call to us that we need to look at, what do we pay them? You know, and if we get multiple cases of that.
The deputy sheriff may choose to eat chicken once in a while, is not allowed to.
Yeah, that's right. So the bottom line is, I'm just making the point, that you may have, you gotta look at it, you gotta analyze what you got. So you look at the turnover you've had, and, you know, then you look at it from there as to what the causes are, and if it is pay and benefit related, then we need to address that.
And we need to, it's gonna take Tommy's and Geraldine's eyes. If you got a high turnover in the department, and they're not necessarily leaving because of pay or
That may be a management
spouse,
issue.
it might be a management issue.
That's right.
I mean, that's what Tommy's and Geraldine's eyes is gonna have to
That's right.
look for.
That's right.
Mr. Darling.
The only additional question that came up from that discussion was reclassification. What limits are there on reclassification within a department?
They're gonna be, I'm gonna review them, I'm gonna make a recommendation to you, and you're gonna review it and make a decision on it.
So all reclassifications within a department, as an example, a department, HR department, somebody wants to turn around and take an individual that's classified as this, and they want to reclassify it and give them a bump and a raise, do they have to get approval?
Oh, okay. The difference there is that in the budget, we'll assign how many of so many positions you have. Let me use, emergency services. What you would do is you would say, in this year's budget, you have 12 EMTs, 15 EMT intermediates, and 20 paramedics. That's all he can do unless he comes back and we authorize a change in that. Now, that wouldn't necessarily come back to you, it would come to me, but he'd have to give me a good business reason why that is. Using that as an example, we may take somebody from an intermediate to a paramedic, and the reason is if he's gotten the classification and the certification for that, if you don't give him a raise, you're probably gonna lose him because he's become more valuable. But in a situation where it's just a department head says, I got this person and I want to take it to a higher classification, we've got to see a good business reason for that.
So they have to bring it to the county manager for the
Yes.
approval of the county manager?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
I just hope
Because
there's
that
some checks and balances on reclassification.
Well, there's a check and balance because nobody gets a raise that we don't sign off on.
Okay, all right, good enough. Thank you,
Anyone
Mr.
else? Not, what's the pleasure of the board? Well, Mr. Bell's not here.
Have y'all determined what you want to do on the date?
I want it 1 year. I think that a person needs to be employed for 1 year, 12 months, in order to participate in this raise. That's generally how it is out there in the private sectors. You know, you generally are there on the job for a year before you get a raise.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mayor.
Well, in my experience, that's not a straight across the board policy. Some people are hired on the basis that they will be evaluated, and as part of their employment contract, if you will, application, that they will be evaluated at the end of 90 days in our case, or 6 months. So, you know, it's not a set policy.
Yeah. I think though, when you got the number of employees we have, I would recommend you have a set policy.
Well, I'm not
days.
saying I disagree with that. What I'm saying is I'm sort of, because of the combination of all those,
Yeah.
I'm sort of leaning towards 6 months, leaving it like it is rather than a year.
Because we already have that in place. I mean,
Yeah.
you're not gonna give someone an employee if they hadn't worked out their
Probation
time.
And
I would
that's,
think you would.
that's part of why I use the 6 months.
Or your probationary status, could you extend that if you saw an employee was not performing quite
Yes.
that level?
Yes, yes,
Well,
we have the authority.
And that has happened.
We've done that.
If you saw that, then you could extend it on out and say, I'm sorry, you're not, you know, we don't want to terminate you.
Well, here, and remember this, let me go to that example. Okay, let's say somebody's hired December 31, or December 20. So they meet the 6 month. okay, but we've had problems with it. And we decided that we're going to extend the probationary period for another 90 days. They're eligible for the increase, but, you know, if we're trying to decide whether they even stay or not, I mean, common sense says we're not going to give them much of an increase.
That's the purpose of going with the system we're looking at, the merit system.
Right.
Is that you don't even have to give a raise.
Right.
If you don't want to.
It can be zero.
It could be zero.
You know.
Say again, would you repeat that?
If the person is underperforming and they have, you've given them 3 or 4 write-ups and they're like one step away, if you know, they might be on probation, that if you mess up again, you're out the door, what kind of merit increase would you give an employee?
That is exactly, I believe, the point, that's my point. I think that's where my heart and soul is. And I just want to, we have differences, but if you're given a cost of living and you do exactly what you just said, you have let everybody purchase their bread and milk, but the man who is not performing, you are getting ready to encourage him to go work somewhere else.
Yeah.
But if he's flatlining, he's doing his job, he's still getting.
But he's not doing his job.
I know, but the guy that's not doing his job, you have evaluated him, and you're going to give him a work plan to improve. But you have been equitable to everyone by giving them a cost of living raise so that they can all buy bread and milk. And if that guy's not doing his job, then you work on him. Not work on that guy who's just doing his flatline job and ain't no way to get that in.
But Ed,
Okay.
if you've given him 4 written warnings, some of them stronger than, you start with
I
a
agree.
warning, then you know, it's a progressive discipline. If he's at the 4th step of that process.
You're handling him, Mr. Wood, you're handling him. But that guy that's over there doing his flatline job, he's being penalized.
No, if he's doing an average job, the average, in the example I gave you, is 1.5%.
Mr. Chairman.
That's right.
So that means then everybody's gonna get a minimum of 1.5%. Unless he's been identified as not doing the job.
If he's below standard, he's not gonna get the 1.5.
That's right.
Okay, so we after all the evaluation, you have 2 guys out of our 700-800 employees, I mean, it is, who's below standard. And I heard you say, I heard you say the reason we hadn't been given a cost of living raise over the last 4 years because we could not afford it.
That's right.
And we still can't afford it. But wait, listen, you see,
Okay, well, wait a minute.
Something inside my head is saying
What
that
I
they
said,
ain't
well, I want to be clear about what
Okay.
I said. What I said was you have a merit increase plan that requires you to give, if you're going to do it, is to give 2.5% raises. And that's why you haven't been doing it, because you haven't had the money to give 2.5% raises. The plan I'm giving you says do away with the 2.5% and set an amount every year that this board thinks it can afford. If that's 1%, if that's 1.5%, if it's 1.75%, if it's 2%, that gives you the flexibility. And Pam and I will be making a recommendation to you in the budget about here's what it's gonna cost you, here's why we think you can afford it, here's the impact on our finances. That gives you the flexibility that you don't have to give 2.5% or don't give anything.
Okay.
So that's what I was saying about you couldn't afford it. You couldn't afford it based on the plan you had. Or that you have
but
currently.
if we couldn't afford the 2.5%, could
Right.
we afforded a 1.25%?
Well,
For the
I'm
number of employees
Well,
we
I'm
have.
gonna make a recommendation to you on what we think you can afford. And then you'll look at that as part of the budget.
So today, we're voting on, what are we voting on today?
Let me make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Well,
And then we'll discuss it.
Okay.
All right.
Make a motion.
All right. Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the recommendation of the pay plan revisions as submitted by County Manager George Wood.
Okay. I have a motion on the floor. Any discussion?
Is it the merit pay plan?
Yes.
Any other discussion?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Real quick. If, in the private sector, the reason we did away with standard of living raises 20, 30 years ago and went to merit is because whenever you have employees that get a standard of living raise, but the guy over here, you're talking about chaos in the workplace, you know, it caused it. So what happened was, like for instance in the private sector, the president of a company now, a CEO of a corporation, most of the time, we don't have an assistant plant manager or a plant manager. The CEO answers directly to the department heads. There's no in between. So we've had to do in the private sector, like we're talking about doing here, it's more equitable, it's based on strictly performance. It rewards the person that wants to move up, that's doing a great job, the attendants. Keep in mind that when you do an evaluation, that's what it's called. It doesn't mean you get a raise because you're evaluated. That's the way it should be. This person that worked 6 months, and I agree with the 6 months because I was just thinking of something. This new employee, unless they're given issues with performance, they will not be evaluated. If we go with a year, they won't be evaluated for a full year. Is that correct? If we set the policy at a year. But since it's 6 months, then whether they have been performing well or not, they will be evaluated. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And we as managers need to be able to tell an employee when we sit down with them, not only the reasons that you're getting a raise, but if you're not getting one, we need to be able to give them reasons why. And if you do that, this system will work. It works fantastic in the private sector. So.
I wouldn't, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Kamara.
Mr. Mayo, as I listen to you, it sounds like you're talking about piecework. Wait a minute. You all are developing, in your business, you all are making an item. Is that correct? If you got a man on machine number 10, and he runs his machine better, more efficiently than the guy on number 7, he might come up with 20 pounds of these things versus 10 pounds of them. So you can, that's a legitimate way of paying him more. The difference is in these categories of public jobs, there is oftentimes no weight limit you can put on performance. There's no highly identifiable thing that you can say this is worth this or that's worth the other. In my former life, I was a body repair painter. The more skilled I was, the faster I worked, the more money I made. That's why I refer to it as piecework. So in the public sector, it's sort of like Mr. Mayo. I beg to differ with. It's apples and oranges.
But
you can
if
talk.
you,
Well, but wait, I'm finished. But you can talk about how a person may be evaluated in a place where you can let your speed and your dexterity and whatever else determines how valuable you are to the employee. But if you're, and this, I'll beg that I might be talking about social service. Say you bring, someone comes in, there's a group of people waiting in line to fill out an application. If that application has those questions on it, and all the people who are working there that day get all the answers corrected on that piece of paper, and some information is put in there and it's all correct, how are you going to tell the difference between what those folk are actually, how one is better than the other one?
well,
That's where we get into that level of subjectivity, and that's my problem with.
well, if you ask me about that, the way I would do that is, how courteous were they? Were there problems? Are there mistakes on the report? How quickly can they process them? If one can do 8 a day and the other can do 4, you can look at that. So there are qualitative differences in how they did their job. I agree with you, it's more difficult than if you're running a machine and you turn out so many parts or something, but it can be done. And so and there are other qualitative things you can use, but just off the top of my head, those are some that I would evaluate. And when you go to them on particular projects or something unique, do they demonstrate a clear understanding of the rules? Do they really know their job? Or are they just going through the motions? So their attendance, do they burn through You get a sick leave day every month. Do they burn through that? Do they save them? Are they excessively late? All of those kinds of things would be involved in it.
Just a minute, Mr. Mayor. We all know that this is a very important issue, and we've been going over it now for over an hour. And we'll sit here as long as y'all want to, because this is a very important issue. But some of the things that's being said now has already been said. So, like I say, we'll sit here as long as y'all want to. But
I just have a short.
Mr. Mayor.
We have the same problem in the private sector. What we do, and of course the county may have to do this, but there are people that are doing a similar job. People that are doing a similar job. It doesn't have to be identical. Now, it doesn't matter to me if it's in the private sector or for our county, our state, whoever. There's more than one criteria to use for evaluating. Our criteria, and it should be for the county, is quality first, quantity, attendance, attitude, and cooperation. That should be the standard for any job in this county or in the private sector. What's wrong with that? It's not just one thing that you evaluate on. We have points that we give to each category. When we have points, a maximum number of points that we give. And when we total that up, we come up with a figure whether they're on the low end of an evaluation, middle, or the high end. And that determines whether they get an increase or not. So those same criteria should be good for the county.
Call the question.
I gotta have a motion first. I don't think we.
I made a motion. That was so long ago we forgot it.
I have a motion on the floor. If no other discussion, all in favor of Mr. Wood's proposal, show sign of right hand. Motion carries. All opposed? 6-1 vote, Ms. Wilson.
I hope we're not gonna have that same problem with the dental insurance renewal.
Okay, Mr. Wood, item 7.
Okay, on the dental renewal, just wanted to point out to you, we are currently with Assurant, and on the spreadsheet I gave you on page 126 of your packet, you see the renewal cost for Assurant under the high option, and then renewal for the low option. We shopped this through Mark III. They're coming back with a different company, Ameritas. They've got 2 high options. One is a PPO high option, and then a second high option. The difference is the PPO high option is cheaper, obviously, because they're within a PPO, and so you're getting the discounts that you get through a PPO. But you can see the rate comparisons down at the bottom of the page. If you look at the high option for the employee under Assurant, it's $33.83. Under the Ameritas, the PPO high option is dropping to $29.20. If you go regular high option, it's $31.40. So clearly, the Ameritas is cheaper on that. And as you then do the low options, the low option for Assurant for an employee is $20.74. Ameritas is $18.84. So, and all of those track down, you can see they're cheaper across the board. So our recommendation to you is that you, well, actually, I'm sorry. So we selected Ameritas, and what I'm doing here is making you aware of it. But there's no reason not to go with them on this. And again, the dental plan is 100% at the employee's option. The county does not pay for it. They make a selection and they pay it through payroll deduction. But the advantage to the employees is you're getting them a group rate, so it's cheaper.
Pleasure to board. Okay, that's
No, there's no
not a
vote.
action. Okay, all right.
And then we have the 2 budget amendments, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
I see the sheriff has appeared.
He's keeping the peace.
Okay, 2 walk-on budget amendments for the Sheriff's Department. Number 447 is $9,355, is to reallocate capital funds to vehicles for the Sheriff's Department, and he is reducing his equipment line item to purchase a vehicle. The next one, both of these are related, is number 448 for the Sheriff's Department, $22,323, to anticipate and appropriate the sale of asset revenues and seized property revenues for vehicle purchase for the Sheriff's Department. So he is using some of the money he currently has in equipment, he is using sale of assets, and his restricted seized property funds for purchase of a vehicle.
Pleasure to vote.
Move adoption.
I have a motion on the floor. We adopt Budget Amendment 448 and 447. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor, show sign of right hand. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Hope.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a 2 o'clock meeting at the airport. Do y'all want to keep moving and hopefully we can wind this up in just a few minutes? We do have to go back in closed session.
Yes, sir.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Let's
Move on.
wind it up.
Okay.
I did have a quick question, though, of the county manager. In your remarks, will you kind of bring us up on the timetable of the budget, when it would be available and
yeah.
for us to review and so
Right.
forth? Okay.
Okay. County managers, comments?
Okay, the first item I was gonna talk about was the budget. And Joe makes a good point. We, this week, we will finish meeting with all of the department heads and all of the outside agencies that put in a request that was timely. I did have one put in one that was after the deadline, and more importantly, it did not comply with the format that we asked for and all the information we asked for. But we've pretty much finished that. We plan on getting the budget to you the Thursday before your meeting on June 2nd. So I think that's somewhere around the 27th or 28th of May, which is about when we did it last year. And last year, what we did, and I'm requesting the same thing, is we held a special meeting for that purpose, so that I could go over the budget in detail with you and present it to you. But I will get it to you about, just like the typical meeting is try to get it to you that Thursday before the Tuesday meeting. So want to do it Wednesday? So we could try to do Wednesday then. So that would be the 26th or 27th of May.
27th is Wednesday.
Wednesday's the 27th. That's what I'd like to do, is have a special meeting, and that way I can present the budget to you, and then that would give you Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday to review it at your leisure, and then we come in on Tuesday for the public hearing, which is June the 2nd. Okay?
So if I'm understanding, you're going to schedule a meeting on the 27th for us to have a work session on the budget?
Right. What I'm going to do is probably take an hour and a half, 2 hours, and hit the highlights of the budget. Okay?
And then we can take it home.
Then you take it home and you read it, and then we can start the work sessions anytime after I present it to you, after the 27th, if, you know, and you don't vote on it till the second meeting in June, which would be the 16th.
Okay, that's good.
So, but the public hearing, Marcia's already sent the notice out. It's always the first regular meeting in June, and that's June 2nd of this year. Okay.
So we're looking at May the 27th?
May the 27th.
Okay, we got 11:30 now with the base community council.
And that's all?
Mm-hmm.
Well, why don't we do it at 9 o'clock that morning?
28.
The 28th.
On the 28th, not the 27th. Is that what you said?
That's up to the board.
What did I couldn't hear you.
What's the 20th?
May 28th at 9 a.m. is what we were talking about, Bill.
Okay. Told you my ears just stopped up today.
Well, I didn't want to interfere with my Memorial Day now.
Memorial Day's the weekend before.
No, it was
Memorial Day's the
fine.
weekend before.
He said maybe 27th. The whole month.
Yeah, it's fine.
Now, they moved it to Thursday to 28th.
Memorial Day is the
All right, that's
weekend
what
before.
On the commissioner's calendar.
Oh, the 28th, we got a gateway board on that day.
Is that at noon?
10.
We can move it.
28's on Thursday.
We can move that?
Thursday.
Service on Aging at 11:30.
I'm figuring 9 to 11. Because you aren't going to be making any decisions. We're just going to be going over the key points. Yeah.
Can you change the gateway meeting?
Who's down there laughing about a quick meeting with Joe?
Do y'all want to start at 8?
That's the play, you know. I was here this morning at 7. I mean, it don't make any difference to me.
Well, 8 to 11:30 would give us ample time.
Okay, that's fine. Let's start at
8.
On the 28th.
8 on the 28th.
I'll try.
And Joe, see if
I'll try.
And Marcia, will you put the notice out?
Absolutely.
Okay. The other, just a couple other things, because I know it's been a long morning and we do have a deadline to get to. We had 4 companies that submitted for the pre-qualification on the jail. The architect is in the process of reviewing those qualifications, so I'll be back to you at the next meeting with a recommendation on that.
What did you say there? How many?
4.
4.
4.
Really? Only 4?
Okay, and then we have a meeting with the architect. We had a meeting last week. It was very good with the architect and the folks from the college, as well as the engineering staff at the city, dealing with that sedimentation detention pond. And we'll be having another meeting this week. I believe it's Thursday, Bill.
Well, I had put it on my calendar, it's Friday, you said the 8th.
It's the 8th. Is that Friday?
That's Friday.
Okay, it's the 8th. You're right. It's Friday.
Where, you said the college, we're at the college, or we're
The college.
I mean, where?
Oh, their big conference room.
Okay.
And what day is it?
Meet with the architect for the access.
What day is it? I'm sorry, what day is it?
I think those were the major
Okay.
things. Like I said, we've been just dealing with the budget, trying to get everything finished there. But like I said, this week we will finish interviewing everybody we're supposed to interview. So that's my report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. Mr. Bell, you have anything?
Don't have anything.
Mr. Pate?
It's been a long day, and I don't feel good. I'm gonna say my comments.
Do I need to skip you, Mr.?
But I need to say one thing, Mr. Chairman.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
I just want to give a shout out to Commissioner Doherty for his neatness and dress.
My wife bought me this lovely outfit.
Mr. Camardi?
I'm gonna hold my comments to another time, but I would like to say this out loud. Quite a few of my constituency in District 2 has called me about DOT issues, drainage, unpaved lots, potholes, and just an apple basket of things. And I just need to say this out loud. We need to maybe have someone from DOT to come to this board and sort of give us and the public a broad understanding again of the kind of things that they are responsible for and things that they cannot touch, and sort of divide up where we stand with these things, because I've been all through Dudley, and there's just some subdivisions that were started, not finished, just a range of things, and thank you, sir. That's my comment.
No comment.
Mr. Mayor, since Bill is not speaking, of course, we did have a DSS board meeting. Were you there, Commissioner Pate?
Yeah, I believe I was there.
Okay.
I felt
And of course, one of the priorities right now is, because this commission board approved the Northwoods project that we're doing with DSS to go paperless, and so that's moving forward. Did we not approve it? The commission?
It'll be on at the next meeting.
Oh, I'm
Next
sorry.
agenda.
I'm sorry, okay. I spoke too soon. Okay. Also, we, several of us, 2 at a time, had an opportunity to meet on the for courthouse security with Judge Arnold Jones to look at possibilities of how we can help and beef up our security in the courthouse. And as we've already mentioned earlier, with society the way it is and what's happened over the last 6 months or so, it's even more important that we look at security issues throughout our county. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Gurney.
Yeah, I have two comments. One I would take a little time with is the Grantham Grange. I had the privilege to go to that last Monday night, a week ago, and it was their 4th annual Community Service Awards presentation. And it's, I preface this with it's good to attend an event that has great news and a positive message. And the Grange across the state and, of course, Grantham Grange has solid and deep roots and they're pillars of the community. And it showed the bank with the number of awards that we give to individuals and groups during the program. And the Grange is a family-oriented community service organization, and I'll make a special note here also that they announced that they won the Grantham Grange was the Grantham Grange selected Grange of the Year in 2014. And also they received this honor 6 out of the last 9 years. And this group of Grangers are very proud of their service record, their community involvement, and as mentioned earlier, it's nice to hear and see positive comments and a message coming out of organizations. And the last thing, as Constance mentioned earlier in her public comments, I did attend the Down East COASH meeting, and the next one will be Tuesday, May 19th, 6:30 at the Public Library on Ash Street. I urge all commissioners, please attend and listen to this information. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Gurney. I had a whole page full, but I scratched through most of them. But I do want to mention, on Wednesday, 29th, I met out at the college with Dr. Albertson and Jack Cannon. AT&T presented a $2,500 scholarship check to the college to go through, to be used with some very worthy students. Also, on Thursday, 30th, Hot Topics Healthcare at the hospital was very good. And also, this past Sunday, May the 3rd, I participated in the groundbreaking ceremonies at Charles B. Aycock. That community is very excited. The community was well represented. They sent invitations out to as many as they could find or get addresses on to the 1962 class. That was the first graduating class at Aycock, and there was probably, I don't know, 12, 15 of them there. But it was a real good ceremony. The construction has already started, but they wanted to have a formal groundbreaking, and it was a good ceremony. And that is all I have. We do need to go back in closed session.
Yes. Yes, sir. It's to discuss a matter with me to preserve attorney-client privilege, to discuss the location and expansion of business in Wayne County, and to consider the performance of an individual employee.
We're in closed session.